I will call the meeting to order. Okay. Thanks, Ben. All right, I'll mention a few meeting logistics. If you're joining remotely, please change your name display to your first and last name so we know who we're talking to. Similarly, if anyone who speaks to address the council, we'd ask you to state your name and where you live. We recommend that you keep your comments to under 3 minutes. And if you're speaking about a specific agenda item, we would like you to keep your comments germane to the topic at hand. If you wish to speak, you must be called on by the mayor. Once you're called on by the mayor, you may make a statement or ask questions, but if you have multiple comments or questions, please ask them all consecutively, as we generally do not allow back and forth comments or questions because that would have the effect of involving the council in a discussion that may not have been warned. And if you speak out of turn, discuss non-germane topics, go on too long, etc., you may be interrupted and reminded of the need to adjust your comments. Next, we have to approve the agenda. Is there any question about any agenda item? We're ready to go forward as is. Okay. Oh, is there a comment?
Yeah, can we add that item, a very short item about October 18 public forum
Oh, yes.
date?
Very good. We can take that up under other
Yeah.
business. Thank you. I saw that email. That's good.
And there are other emails too, so.
Okay.
I might as well mention that I'm going to pull the minutes off the consent agenda for actually 2 reasons. One is actually meaningful to this group. One is a typo that it's not just a typo because it has substantive meaning and we left off indigent. So I want to fix that rather than just add it as fixing a typo. But also there is a question about a motion that created a subcommittee. There was a lot of crosstalk and discussion, which I interpreted as discussion, and another listener interpreted as actually part of a change of the motion. So we may need, I'm going to listen to it again. And what's going to happen is I'm going to have to either decide I was correct or decide I'm not. Either way, it could come before you all and you'll have to approve it and take a side. So I think in the future, we just need to be a little more precise on what some of these motions are. So this kind of thing won't come up again. So just
Great. Is there, if it has to come before the council as for a vote, is there a way to isolate and attach just that audio clip to the council packet
Oh,
so that we can all hear it and try to decide for ourselves what we think happened?
I could try to do that. I don't know if that would work with our system.
Okay, just a thought.
I can give you the timestamp as to when it is.
That'd work too.
And obviously, if you all decide that my interpretation is wrong, you just vote to edit the minutes when they're presented.
Yep.
But because I may end up deciding the same way, but we'll see. I'm open to the idea that I screwed it up.
Okay, thanks. Next, we have general business and appearances. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to address the council on any topic that is not on tonight's agenda. As always, we ask you to state your name and where you live and limit your comments to 5 minutes. Is there anyone in the room who'd like to be heard? Yes, sir, in the back.
Weird. Jim Sheridan, I used to call on you 35 years ago in the printing industry and your father. So anyways, Maurice Martineau, 6 Scribner Street, lived here 30 years, past elk member, have hunted with crossbow on the elk's property for years.
So
I always ask.
I'll interrupt you to just say, we do have a topic on the agenda tonight about hunting on country
You
club
do?
road.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
Oh, that's okay.
Then let that pass and let me use the other minute and a half to say, looking for if we have any Airbnb rules for Montpelier, and what makes me say that is because the house below me, who is owned by a woman out of San Francisco, and she has an Airbnb in Detroit. And Ed Flanagan, who's across the street in WNCS, we had troubles with bears in the area. And, you know, when someone's in an Airbnb and not accustomed to worrying about bears, I mean, they were piling the trash out there. So we had really no way to communicate with her except for through Airbnb. And boy, was she irate. So, you know, Ed just said, you know, I'm just telling you what happened to me. And I don't know, is there a, do they have a place where they have to communicate, and how we communicate with them so that we don't disrupt their business and be a good neighbor, but at the same time, I mean, I put my trash in a shed and the bear even clawed at the door. And so, I mean, there's not much we can do. And, you know, you call the game warden and he tells me about what not to do for bear. And yeah, I know I did that. But anyways, I'm just looking for if there's any guidance on Airbnbs in Montpelier.
We did adopt a registration requirement a year or two ago, and I'm not sure what the current status of that is, but so we'll look into that.
Right, just so that we, even if we could call and have a number where we could call them instead of doing it out on the web in an ineffective business.
Yep, thank you. That's a good point. Anybody else in the room? Giovanna?
I'm Giovanna Peebles. I live on Woodcrest Drive in the suburbs of Montpelier. I'm a District 2 person. I'm going to start by thanking all of you because I know your job is thankless and I know you do not get thanked enough. I know, I can't imagine how hard you work. I know what a difficult jobs you all have. So I'm going to start with thanking you for your work. This morning, I sent a 2-page email to all the city council members and to John, our recorder, and to Kelly. Specifically, very concerned with the language of a motion that was passed by the council and is in the minutes of September 24th that John was specifically speaking about a few minutes ago. And I was in public service for 40 years and motions, and I continue to be on nonprofits. And motions are really important. Preciseness of motion language is very important, especially on big ticket items, especially on items there is contention in the community and contention among the council members. So I encourage you to have very precise language with motions and to the extent possible, written ahead of time. So if the council knows that you want to approve a motion or that there's some likelihood that you will approve a motion, for example, the motion in, that I'm speaking of is section 10-25-375 in the minutes of September 24. And what would be useful is for city council members to know exactly what they're voting on, and for the Montpelier citizens to know exactly what you're voting on. And then when you read the minutes, we can all know what was being voted on. I think that that particular motion, and I'm not, this is not nefarious. This is not about blaming. This is just about making sure we're very clear, especially on difficult motions, contentious motions, expensive motions, that we're just absolutely precise in what we are saying and what people are voting, what people are seconding, and then what people are voting on. And that's all I have to say. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Giovanna.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much,
that.
Jack.
Anybody else? Sandy?
Sandra Vitztum, 14 Loomis Street. I'm speaking right now because I have actually to be at another meeting right now. I urge the city to pursue another route to develop Country Club as soon as possible. A lot of time and a lot of money is being wasted. And the council is getting backed into making a very poor decision for the city. This mistake could cost the city millions of dollars. The council was told 3 falsehoods on September 10th. Number one, the city does not need to hire a realtor at this stage of developing Country Club. 2, there are in fact plenty of other consultants and better planners, in my opinion, who are interested in helping the city. We were told that there were no other choices. 3rd, there is no rush. The city cannot possibly meet the readiness standards that other towns have to meet for the CDBG grants. The state cannot give us money that would be safer going to other towns who are prepared. It is unethical and possibly illegal to hire a consultant without following city procurement procedures. It's foolish to proceed when the city has not seen a single financial analysis for the current design. I ran numbers last week. The project as designed is not feasible. You can see that in the top part of that spreadsheet. We taxpayers are going to be pushed into a corner to accept an awful deal. We will never know what alternatives were available. I am suggesting that the city pursue planning grants. This is the grant season. There are 4 grants that we are eligible for and we are encouraged to apply for. They total over $2 million for planning. We could do a lot of planning and actually go all the way through to construction documents and finish permitting the roads and the infrastructure under money that people would like to give us. We are a very high priority, as most people know, for the Catalyst and the Borders grants. If we can do this correctly, we can do this with minimum risk to the city. I ran numbers for another alternative, which will probably never be discussed now, that would actually give the city $83 million of new grand list tax basis. That scenario does not require any subsidies whatsoever. The design that you have in front of you right now, I think is going to require something like $40 million of subsidies, which I don't know how we're going to get. So I am concerned that you're going to proceed 6 to 8 months out into next year and then hit a real roadblock or give away the farm, literally. So then I do think that it would be at the very least a good idea to get a financial analysis of what you're doing and please slow down. There really is no rush at this point. I'm trusting you to do this right. It affects my property. It affects my ability to keep living in Montpelier. And I think it affects our grandchildren. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the room would like to be heard? Steve.
I'm going to touch on a couple of things related to that motion problem in the minutes. You may want to reconsider and or reaffirm what you meant at this meeting, because any decisions made by the subcommittee, if the subcommittee was improperly formed, are going to be invalid. So you might have to move on that quicker than 2 weeks from now. I don't want to waste any of my 5 minutes with that, but that's really serious. Right now, our city plan is under appeal. Our environmental assessment, the city staff have been dragging their feet for 2 years on that. And only when I started asking questions, is it safe for the Turtle Island kids to start going to school there, did they start blasting emails off to Stone Environmental and say, how do we get this supplemental site assessment done? Who's going to do the testing? Is it safe? Has anybody tested around the building where the kids are going to play? The answer is no. So
we are in the middle of a multi-year cleanup of a brownfield with arsenic, with lead, with mercury, with heptachlor, whatever. I don't need to memorize the chemical names, but we have soft pedaled or tried to sweep that under the rug, and that property needs cleanup. And until we do that cleanup, the remediation, not just the assessment, which we still haven't completed, but until we complete the assessment and do the remediation, we won't know where housing can go and where it can't go. We won't know where we have to cap versus where we have to excavate and remove truckloads and truckloads of soil. And are we going to do that while the kids are there? Or are we going to do that while we reconstruct the road? This is just a huge example of poor planning. So you need to reconsider that hiring a consultant, especially a conflicted consultant who we paid big dollars for a report, and the main recommendation in their report was to do a phase 2 design. And then this same consultant is more than willing at his own profit to throw that phase 2 design under the rug. That's a violation of state law for citizen engagement in planning. That's one of the core issues in the planning appeal, and I'm prepared to litigate that as well if I need to. Hopefully y'all will do your job and I won't need to. But it's improper to hire a consultant when we're not ready for an RFP because we haven't completed our due diligence on toxicity and remediation. And when you're hiring a consultant who made the recommendation to engage the public in a phase 2 design process and now is profiting by skipping the phase 2 design process and doing a design behind closed doors with a developer. So that's the nutshell of it. I've got more detail, but you don't have time for it. I'll email you some stuff. So the motion was not a contract approval. I saw an email that Ben sent saying, oh yeah, the motion included White and Burke. It's like, yeah, but that doesn't count. That's not a shoe-in for White and Burke to get the contract. That's saying the subcommittee can consult with White and Burke on whether we are going to put an RFP together or not. That's a very different thing. So I'm just saying y'all have made a mess, and it's a multi-year, multi-million-dollar, multi-expensive mess. And right now it's put children at risk. So I've engaged, the Secretary of Natural Resources to get her people on it and to hurry up and get the testing done to where we know it's safe for the kids to play outside. Test the soccer fields, test the area around the school, But I'm just shocked that we pay this amount of money for staff and y'all are blasé about holding them accountable. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Is there anybody else physically in the room who'd like to be heard on any topic? Or is there anyone online who'd like to be heard at this point? I'm not seeing any hands raised. All right, we can move to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exclusion of item A, which has been deleted? Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Next up, we have appointments to the Planning Commission. We have a motion for that?
I'll move the appointments.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Go ahead.
I'm just wondering if anyone here and want to speak. I was gonna ask.
That is a good question, and we will see. We have,
We have one.
all right. Step right up. Thank you for coming.
Sure. Hi, good evening, everybody. I just got here, so I'm
Perfect.
right on time.
Yeah,
Hi, my name is Aaron Kasicki. I've been with the Planning Commission for 7 years. Just asked for reappointment for 2 years. I just want to say very quickly, thank you for passing the city plan. That was the culmination of a lot of work with Mike Miller's team and with the commission. Really glad that was passed. We're now shifting into another project, doing sort of a front to back look and hopefully some revisions of the zoning regulations. And so just like to say, I'd like to be part of that project. I think a lot of the information that we gleaned from the city plan process will be useful as we take a closer look at the zoning regulations. And so I'd like to be part of that project and I hope I can stay on for another 2 years. So,
Great,
thank you.
thanks.
Thank you for your service.
Ben,
Yeah, I just want to say like, thank you. 7 years on the planning commission, no joke, right? Asking to sign up for more. And, you know, and I just want to like, really congratulate you on the passage of the city plan. The fact that it won the plan of the year from the Vermont Planners Association. I believe it won some kind of award from the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. You know, having seen some of those meetings, I know how hard you folks work and it's really impressive, the team that we have on the planning commission.
Yeah, you'd have to ask Mike Miller, but I think the plan also won an award for the Northern New England Planning Commissioners as well.
Yep.
We're gonna go to nationals soon. Hopefully win that.
You'll do Montpelier proud.
Yeah, let's see if we can bring up some hardware. But no, thanks. I just, it's been interesting to see how the commission's focus has shifted over the last 7 years. And I'll also say that, you know, the composition of the commission now is we have a lot of new energy, a lot of, you know, really good creative thinking collectively with the commission. So it's exciting to have that sort of new energy to really take a fresh look at the zoning regulations.
Awesome.
Yeah.
yeah, I think this is great. You know, the city wouldn't work without all the thousands of hours of volunteer time that people put into it. And the planning commission is one of those boards that we're required to have and has that's terrific function. So I appreciate all your work.
Yeah, thanks. And I just say, you know, our work at the planning commission is made a lot easier with Mike Miller and his staff working in tandem with us. So we're very lucky to have that here in Montpelier.
Yeah. And Leah Canlon, not here. Okay. There's a motion to approve. Council members, anyone else have any questions before we let them go? Okay. There's a motion to appoint these two members, and I believe there is a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thanks. Congratulations or condolences.
I'll have to get finance.
There we go. All right, Rialto Bridge Local Concern Meeting. Evening.
Hey, Travis. All right, we're here to talk about the Rialto Bridge.
Could you all identify yourself?
Yep, get into that in this slide here.
Okay.
Yep, introductions. My name's Aaron Guyette. I work for a company called VHB. We're an engineering firm. We have an office right here in Montpelier, down in Greenwich Shed Lane. I spend most of my time in our Winooski office up north. I'm joined tonight with my Jim Gish.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jim Gish. I live in Middlebury. I'm excited to be here tonight.
Jim is working on the public engagement side of things for the project, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. We also have two other colleagues here, Dylan Sutter and Jason Keener.
Thank you all for being here.
Quickly wanted to identify our project team here. This really is a V-Trans led project. This is in the program that's called the Town Highway Bridge Program. So funding for the project comes from the federal government, V-Trans, and there is a local match. Obviously, the city is a partner in the project. It's a city-owned bridge. Federal Highway Administration provides the federal side of the funding. GPI is a consultant that we have as a sub-consultant to us, providing some constructability input. And Mott McDonald is providing geotechnical engineering support. Assuming you're all very familiar with the location, but for those who aren't, State Street, downtown. We're at the very beginning of the V-Trans project development process. As you might imagine, V-Trans has a very set scripted process they follow for development of all of their projects. We're in what's called the scoping phase, where we're gathering information. We're going to be developing alternatives for the project. We'll be evaluating those alternatives, putting them into a report, and then presenting back our recommendation to all of you. We've completed a site visit. V-Trans has gathered a bunch of information themselves. Survey's been done. Utility information has been gathered. But there's still more information to gather. There will be some geotechnical borings that occur. There will probably be more site visits that happen. But today we're talking about really it's the local concerns. We know some of the local concerns, but really we want to hear from all of you, and we want to hear from the public on concerns related to the bridge, concerns related to the project in general, concerns about downtown, and we'll take that information. It'll go into our process here as we look at alternatives and we look at how the bridge could be replaced and reconstructed. After the scoping phase is done, we'll have a preferred alternative. That preferred alternative really will come from all of you, from the city council. We'll move into preliminary design from there and the NEPA process, just the National Environmental Policy Act. So evaluation of the project for its impacts on the environment. We'll move into right-of-way, any right-of-way impacts, environmental permitting. The project will go into final design, and then finally it'll enter the construction phase. So the existing conditions, just a couple of shots of State Street. I think these are all familiar sites to all of you. To point out here some of the things that we're looking at the lane configurations, we're looking at the parking, we're looking at the nice wide sidewalks that you have downtown, and really the vibrancy of those sidewalks, trying to envision how that looks when the bridge is replaced. We have the bridge itself. This is a part of the plans from the original bridge construction. I believe it was 1915. So this bridge has performed over its service life, and it is, as you can imagine, nearing the end of its service life. Jim and I were just catching up a little bit before the meeting, and there's not a lot of bridges this old around the state. So here's some pictures of the underside of the bridge. As you can see, there is deterioration that's occurring. The bridge has seen some better days. I will say it's not unsafe, but it is certainly showing signs of wear and tear. We have a draft purpose and need statement. This is a statement that really guides the design team through the alternatives process. We refer back to this and we take the alternatives that we're developing and we make sure the alternatives are meeting this purpose and need statement. We'll refine this as we go through the early part of the scoping here, but really this is kind of the vision for the project. It's used throughout the NEPA process when we're evaluating that preferred alternative throughout that process. So as we think about design alternatives and we think about the historic nature of the project. Really, there's four general alternatives that we consider. There's the no action for NEPA for a scoping process. Really, it's a requirement to consider no action. That wouldn't meet the purpose and need statement, so it's usually pretty easy to eliminate that. There's bridge rehabilitation, which could be a minor rehabilitation, it could be a major rehabilitation. There is some merit to looking at rehabilitation. However, we'll get to this a little bit later in the presentation. What we've learned through following along the State Street Drainage Project is the composition of the abutments. And as you saw from the pictures of the superstructure, the beams, there's a lot of deterioration happening there. We think it's prudent to replace the superstructure. We were kind of wondering about the substructure, though, if there could be a rehabilitation of the substructure and potentially just replacing the superstructure. Seeing the core through the abutment, though, it's I've got some pictures of it. It's composed of cast in place concrete on each face, and then there's laid up stone masonry in the core of those abutments. And I feel like it probably is not trying to get too far ahead of ourselves, but it probably is the right call to replace those abutments as well if we're looking at a new 100-year service life for the next bridge. So rehabilitation is a reality, but may be ruled out. New bridge on new alignment. There's no real place to put a bridge on a new alignment here. There's a lot of infrastructure around. You can see from the aerial photo, as you know, from downtown, there really is no place to put a bridge on a new alignment. So that would be eliminated. So that kind of leaves us with new bridge on existing alignment as the likely alternative that we're looking at. And then we would develop alternatives for the bridge type and the phasing for the new bridge on the existing alignment. A few key considerations that we've already identified, mobility being number one. It is likely that the bridge would need to be closed for replacement. And so as we look at closing a street like State Street, how are we maintaining bicycle and pedestrian traffic? How are we maintaining vehicular traffic so that people can still get to the destinations? And then unique to this project, how are we maintaining access to the Rialto building itself, which has access from the existing bridge? This is just brainstorming, really kind of basic potential detours here for vehicular access and bike ped access. The access to the Rialto building, we said there's 3 access points from the bridge itself. And as we are working to replace the bridge, how are we maintaining that access to those 3 access points? There is the historic considerations, the bridge itself, as you can imagine, 1915, it's a historic bridge. There are historic aspects of it, such as the railing, which are, they contribute to they contribute to the historic attributes of that downtown region, that downtown area. So the new bridge likely will have requirement for some type of aesthetic railing that fits with the context. There are the buildings that are adjacent to the bridge. So each of those 5 buildings that each of the 4 corners in the Rialto building itself, they're all historic buildings. So we need to take that into consideration. There's a lot of infrastructure down there that's underground. Apologize, it's a little bit blurry, but this is a GIS view of the city's mapped utilities. There's water, there's sewer, there's electric, there's telecommunications. So there's a lot of utilities to work around there within the street itself. Street lights. So then there's some other considerations that we have as well. We've reviewed and we understand and we reviewed the downtown master plan. I think this is a document from around the year 2020 developed. We know there's some recommendations for this area and the bridge itself, so we're taking that into consideration. These pictures on the right are from the State Street drainage project. It was great. We spent a bit of time coordinating with Kurt and his crew at Public Works to be able to get down here and take a look as construction was ongoing. Really fascinating to see what's underground there. There was, along with, the gravels and what you'd expect, there was a lot of timber buried in the street, granite cobbles underneath the pavement, concrete. So it's helpful to understand what's there. From that aspect, the picture that's kind of in the middle at the top of the screen is the core through the abutment. And this is where the new drainage outfall goes through the abutment. You can see there's concrete on the face. In the middle is that laid up stone masonry. The bridge aesthetics we know are important. Being in the historic district and being a historic bridge itself, the railing we talked about previously, the lighting that's on the bridge, we know that's an important aspect. And so but those are items that we'll take into our alternatives development process. And we also know stakeholder engagement, extremely important on this project. We've been coordinating with Kelly, with Kurt, along with property owners and business owners and residents, as well as Montpelier Alive. This is really Jim's kind of forte and why he's part of the project. So I'd like maybe Jim to say just a couple of words about the ongoing efforts.
Sure, thanks, Aaron. I appreciate that. Again, my name is Jim Gish. I live in Middlebury. I work as a community liaison for BHB. And I wanted to say a word or two about how we're going to approach stakeholder engagement on what's going to be a challenging project for Montpelier. The kind of standard practice for public engagement in a project like this is to hold a couple public meetings, put up a website, put out periodic emails, occasionally update city council, the select board, et cetera. That's kind of standard practice boilerplate for public engagement. But a few years ago, VTrans began investing in a new approach to stakeholder engagement, particularly for complex projects that are taking place in our crowded downtowns. And so that led to the position of community liaison. So the idea behind a community liaison is that a person is embedded in both camps. They're embedded in community and they're embedded on the project team. So the community liaison understands all the decisions that are being made at the project team level. They've also fully documented the concerns, local concerns and issues, both kind of the long-term ones as well as the short-term ones that inevitably crop up. So basically, you've got this kind of continuous communication between the community and the project team that's facilitated by a community liaison. And that kind of sustained approach to engagement has worked really well for us. Aaron and I, with VTrans, kind of pioneered the concept of the community liaison during the 6 years of the Middlebury Rail and Tunnel Project. Okay, these were two failed bridges on Merchants Row and on Main Street in Middlebury. They didn't make it as far as the Rialto Bridge had before they failed, but they were then replaced by a rail tunnel. If you know Middlebury, this is right in the heart of Middlebury, similar to the Rialto Bridge being right in the heart of Montpelier. So if we had experience in kind of how to manage the trickiness, the complexities of that situation. And since then, I've gone on to manage other bridge projects in Bellows Falls, Virgins, and a federal scoping study in Gaston County focused on truck traffic on 22A. So we kind of developed the concept behind the community liaison and have had a chance to work it out too. I think in this scoping study, what's going to be important is to document concerns and issues and make sure that all voices are heard. There's a lot that needs to take place there. But it's so important to invite everyone to the table, make sure their voices are heard. And then to make sure that the project team that's planning this project has an opportunity to react to that and to understand how things look at street level locally here. The goal of all of this is to move the project forward with less cost, less impact, and less time taken too. If everything works, things move smoothly forward. And so we've kind of gotten on the ground here, as Aaron said. We had a chance to meet with Kelly and with Kurt. We met with the two, I would say, most concerned property owners, Jesse Jacobs and Steve Everett, to kind of lay things out for them. We had a chance to meet with Katie Trouts and with two of your business owners downtown, Lauren Parker and Karen Williams. We'll continue that. I was surprised to find in kind of doing my research that there are, by my count, 47 businesses and nonprofit organizations in the one block between Elm Street and Main Street, both street level and upstairs. So we've got some work to do. And that's just kind of ground zero there. There are certainly many other stakeholders there. So my message to you is that this is an important project for us to degree. I know we're only at the planning level here, but we're fully focused on making sure that all those folks are reached out to, and that as we go through the process of arriving at a preferred alternative, it's with all the right voices having been heard and brought to you, as well as to the V-Trans team for final decisions.
Right, thanks, Jim. So our next steps are to really prepare those alternatives, evaluate them, prepare our scoping report, and then back in front of all of you for our alternatives presentation meeting. From a schedule standpoint, we're looking at working through the scoping process this fall and winter, with having really a recommended alternative in the spring to summer of next year. We'll then move into the preliminary design, preliminary plans. There's all the right-of-way permitting that happens. Looking at final design, complete by 29. And then construction at some point in the future. It's undetermined the exact year, but it would be the early 2030s when construction would occur.
It's a long way off, but it would sort of be reassuring news to bring to the stakeholders on State Street. If this is not happening, then I'm planning.
Yeah.
So with that, we really want to kind of open up the floor to all of you, hear from you, and then potentially hear from any members of the public. Maybe before I do that, I'll just mention two names that are on here from V-Trans that couldn't make it tonight, but Laura Stone is the project manager for V-Trans throughout the scoping phase, and then Jonathan Griffin would be the project manager when it transitions into the design phase. So we're here to listen. If there's questions, we can try to answer them, but really we want to kind of record your questions, your thoughts, and your concerns.
All right, thanks. I'm sure we'll have comments and questions from council. We also have at least one person who's already a member of the public who wants to be heard. Ben.
I just have two questions. One is sometime in the early 2030s. And I'm just wondering if you could talk more about that timeframe and what determines that, right? And then the second question is, I guess maybe for Jim, I think I remember in the Middlebury project, either it was the Middlebury Partnership or the Chamber or somebody applied for USDA funds to help mitigate impacts to downtown businesses. And it just strikes me that if we've got some time here, planning for mitigation for the impact that the businesses are definitely going to feel, whether that's additional marketing or short-term loans or, whatever those tools are. And I'm wondering, is there any provision for that in any of this kind of, that is federal highway funding running through V-Trans? Just what your experience has been with that, because like bringing them to the table is great, but what are we offering them in terms of support during what's going to be a very disruptive process?
Maybe you want to address the cost for this now, so you can talk about what is the percentage breakdown, and then you might address it.
Sure. I guess from a project development standpoint, it's kind of two different funding scenarios. One of them is kind of the standard funding, which is 80% federal, 10% state, 10% local match. Back in 2012, I believe it was Act 153 maybe was passed, which has allowed VTrans to offer municipalities that are in the Town Highway Bridge program, if you elect to close the bridge and you don't have a temporary bridge, you're eligible for 50% reduction in your share. So it goes from 10% down to 5%. And then VTrans would pay 15% and federal government still pays 80%.
My question was about timing.
I was going to say, I don't think we answered everything. The time frame is very much a budget question, and with budget uncertainty in the years to come, it's hard to say exactly which year funding would be available for this project. And I think that's why VTrans is not necessarily committing to it's going to be this exact year, but rather that time frame. And I'll say, VTrans manages a lot of projects, right? And things do move from year to year. Projects will move up as the need gets more and more, and projects will slip as budgets are like thought out. So,
Jim, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to quickly respond to about the grant. So yeah, Middlebury had a USDA grant, relatively minor. I'd say that the biggest impact grant-wise in Middlebury was from VTrans, and it was in direct response to the volume of volunteer effort that was put forth in Middlebury. We had a group called Neighbors Together that formed specifically around maintaining quality of life during this 6 years of this project. I think at the time we asked for a grant to market the downtown businesses. We logged 1,000 volunteer hours, and so VTrans saw that as an indication of the town's willingness to put themselves to work here. And in return, we worked out a grant over several years that allowed us to basically promote the downtown while all this activity was taking place in the center of town.
I guess I wanted to make one point about that. There were no grants to pay businesses directly, and that was not the intent. The intent was to have the grants to be able to support the downtown in general. So that's an important distinction.
Okay, Jim.
First of all, having worked with you on another thing one time, I know that like part of the bridge starts to collapse, you will speed it up. Because I know when we did the roundabout, it was 10 years, and I called after about 8 years and said, well, how do we speed this up? Well, if you can find a volunteer that passes away in an accident there, it'll probably start tomorrow. So I do know that, if there's a danger point, it will be speeded up. My main question is, how much do you work with a building that's over the river like that is going to be right next to the bridge? How do you make sure that is not compromised, seeing how it's just kind of suspended there?
Yeah, that's a good question. And, there will be some investigation, not just with that building, but with all of the surrounding buildings as to the composition and really what they can withstand from a vibration standpoint. So
that one probably is a real concern in a way, I would imagine.
It is. Yeah, they're all a concern because they're all historic, right?
Right.
And I think it really is the composition that, what are the materials that have been put into that building, and how much can it withstand from a vibration standpoint? And then once we understand that, then we can put that into the contract documents of those limitations that the contractor needs to adhere to.
Is that an unusual occurrence when you have a building over the river like
the configuration of having the Rialto building over the river is abnormal for Vermont. I think the same principles apply. It's not abnormal to have buildings near construction, right, or very much adjacent to construction. So yeah, safeguarding those buildings is, and the safety of the people that are in them is paramount.
Thank you. Sal.
I know it's early days, but I'm just wondering, you've mentioned a 6-year project. I'm assuming this will be a shorter duration, but it's likely to be longer than the recent disruption with the the stormwater line. Is it likely to span several season changes? What do you do in the winter? I mean, how does that work? The residents, the tenants, the businesses, will be really disrupted. I'm just curious if you can take a stab at, what's the duration that we're contemplating? I realize it's a ways off, but.
Yeah, that's exactly one of the things that we're going to be looking at through the scoping process, and the alternatives. If it's a traditional construction project and it's, working from, sun up to sundown, 5 days a week. And if it's phased project, that could add to the schedule. There's also some alternatives that could be using accelerated bridge construction, where it may be more intense disruption, where around the clock work, but for a shorter duration. We think, there is some possibility to make this quite a short disruption from a vehicle, like having the road open, having the bridge open. But potentially there's additional disruption beyond that, just from construction noise in the downtown area. So those are parts that we're looking at as part of the alternatives, and we'll put back in front of you with the alternatives evaluation.
I have a feeling that your sense of short and my sense are different.
What is your sense?
Well, short would be a couple of months, but.
Yeah, I will say, V-Trans has a pretty good track record with their accelerated bridge program. They've done a number of projects that have been like a 28-day closure, 35-day closure.
Well, it sounds like you're sensitive to the issue, and I appreciate that a lot. And I know that the folks downtown will greatly appreciate and will tell you that.
Yeah, I think the thing to consider is, if we can, design a bridge that has a lot of prefabricated elements, those can be put, they're fabricated off-site, they're brought to the site, they're put together. That can really speed up construction. So those are the things that we're going to be looking at. And schedule is a main driver in a situation like this, where we want to limit those impacts.
Great, thank you.
So, would it be fair to say that the city values the shorter duration?
I think it'd be fair to say that.
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Presumably there are trade-offs, but probably yes.
Yep.
Carrie or Adrian, do you have anything? Okay, Wade Cleveland, I see you've got your hands up. And Palin, I didn't know, I couldn't see all the way down to you. Did you have anything?
Yeah.
Okay. Wade Cleveland, are you still there? Here we are.
I just wanted to know if there are any current structure, are there any current major deficiencies with the bridge?
I will say the bridge is not unsafe, as I mentioned. There is concrete that's deteriorating. You can see that in the pictures. This is a unique composition where it appears to be riveted plate girders that are encased in concrete. And the concrete is starting to come off the exterior of those plate girders, but the plate girders themselves appear to be in pretty good shape still. So I don't know that I've completely answered your question, but it is deteriorating. It is something that the state is keeping an eye on. I should mention that this bridge is inspected by the state. You all know that it's part of their 2-year inspection. So it does get, attention from the state, every 2 years. If a bridge gets to the point where there start to be major concerns, that, inspection timeframe will shrink to a year normally is the first step, and then it could be 6 months, it could be every month. I believe it's still in a 2-year inspection cycle though.
Any other questions from members of the public? John?
John Snell, live on First Avenue, have been in town for 50 years now. And I have a couple concerns. This project, that, as I remember it, was talked about being completed in the early 20s. So it's a 10-year jump. I know that at that point in time, repairs were made to keep it going, but this has been on the table for a long time. One of my concerns is we rebuild the bridge, but what about the rest of the street from State Street all the way through Elm Street and beyond? My understanding is that there are people, and maybe DPW can talk about that at some point, people who have talked about rebuilding that street sidewalk to sidewalk. I don't know whether that changes with what happened this last summer, but one of my interests in this is getting more trees in. We lost 4 trees in the recent project, and the only way we can put more in now is pretty substantial, and would be silly to do only unless we were in a bigger project and could incorporate tree wells into that. But for us to even plant the 4 trees that are dead now, we may get 5 years out of them, but that's it, because they're in 4x4 by 2-foot pits, and trees just don't live that way. I would love to see, as this bridge is being designed or considered, whether or not there's an option for building in an infrastructure that would allow a river walk on the north side of the bridge. I know somebody else says they own that airspace, but we could at least consider it as an option. And I guess the other question I'd have for you folks is the structure under the stores on the south side independent of the roadway? Thank you.
With regard to the structure under the Rialto building, it does appear to be an independent structure. We have been under there. There's a joint in between there. You can see there's different structural composition of the 2 structures. One of the things that we are looking at is to do some investigation along that interface to be able to determine the competency of the concrete, the materials, and to potentially make some improvements to seal up that area so that when this project is complete, that structure that supports the Rialto building is also in good shape. But we are still investigating that.
Yes.
I want to second John Snell's comments. The tree wells should definitely be planned while that section of state is going to be closed. That's the time to dig in some tree wells on both sides between the river, North Branch, and Elm. Also, we should plan for potential electric infrastructure, because we can get under them on all our bridges, we should plan to get electric infrastructure underneath and make our bridges convenient charging stations for downtown, because it's so easy to get under. It's very expensive to trench from somewhere else. I don't think I don't see an easy route. I don't think Langdon Street's gonna serve as a detour. So if there was money for a detour, even a temporary bridge type detour, it could go from the bottom of the Haney lot across to the new parking lot where the chargers are. That's a place where you could put, you might have to cross Jacobs, the rear end of Jacobs property to do that. But that's a way that traffic could get through town in both directions. If there's going to be a months-long disruption. I note the irony of them applauding our vibrant sidewalks, and think of all the merchants who didn't appreciate the vibrant sidewalks while those sheeting was being pounded in. But I think that's the gist of it. Oh, again, Riverwalk. It could be that there's advantage to acquiring or resolving the issue of the air rights, if they're real indeed. As part of this bridge reconstruction, that might be warrant a wider bridge with a terrace on it, a pocket park of some sort that would go consistent with the idea of the Riverwalk. But that's been a valid visionary topic for many years, and here's an opportunity to act on it. That's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Steve. Well, thanks. This is an interesting thing. I remember when I was in high school reading The Merchant of Venice. One of the settings of The Merchant of Venice is the Rialto in Venice, which is a stock market or something built on a bridge in Venice. And I never really pictured how that would work. And then I moved to Montpelier and I saw the Rialto right here. I think it's a good thing that we're getting ahead of this, getting in really early so that you can talk about the suggestions, the Riverwalk, the Stockholm model tree wells, all the things, and minimizing disruption to the businesses and residences. I know that on the one hand, it's good that we're looking years in advance for the plan for the disruption. On the other hand, by the time the money comes down, it might be like 1 year from when we know the money's there to when the construction happens. So we should be prepared for that too. But I'm sure we're going to be hearing. Oh, I did have one other question. In the flow chart that you showed, there was like there's a 3-year gap between design and final design or something like that. What's happened during those 3 years?
Yeah, there's the preliminary design, and then there's the right-of-way process and environmental permitting process. So that would be taking place. I think what we showed as well is like the end of final design. So you get into final design, that's where all the structural calculations are taking place, and the final plans development. And that's usually could be up to a couple of year process as well.
Okay.
So there's a fair amount that happens in that time frame.
Great. Well,
I did have one question about the comment about the temporary bridge. I think as we looked at this project, we were assuming that a temporary bridge would not be needed and maybe really not helpful in the traffic flow downtown. But now I'm wondering, did we kind of jump to a conclusion there that we shouldn't have?
yeah, probably you get different answers from different people, as is usually the case. My thinking is that if it's a month or two, we save half of the city's share on the construction and not do a temporary bridge, but other people might have different thoughts.
Yeah.
temporary in that location versus another alternate route temporary bridge. for that.
But I assume that if we chose to do a temporary bridge, that would involve rerouting traffic through an existing parking lot and then across the temporary bridge, that would be the same thing, right?
Yeah, it would be. Yeah, there's a lot of logistics to work through with that.
Yep. Okay, well, more to come, right?
Okay, yeah, thank you. We appreciate your guys' time.
Thanks a lot. And I'll just say again, I'm glad we're planning so far ahead for this. All right. Next up, I thought we would take up items 8 and 9 together because they both relate to the use of Country Club Road. And 8 is the use policy for dogs, and 9 is hunting. Are you kicking this off?
Sure. Just for both the items, just for general awareness, we did have Recreation put together a use of Country Club Road. Since we first bought the property, there has been quite a bit more use in that location. And so just to let folks know what we're up to up there, we've got youth soccer, childcare, rentals, there's cross-country skiing, cross-country running, disc golf, soccer, camps are up there, gardening. There are walkers there quite a bit. There are bike riders. There are dogs with their owners. Has been some hunting in the past, and then we have city sponsored events. And so it's just a pretty big list of use. And so for the purposes of the first item on the agenda associated with dogs and Country Club Road, we did receive a few complaints. One was related to our youth sports programs, and just trying to figure out a way to have both, youth sports programs and dogs and their owners coexist. There, have been instances where, maybe there have been, some messes on the fields, or that, maybe, dogs aren't as controlled as they could be. And then the other instance is that now that we have Turtle Island in the old clubhouse, the Elks building, just making sure that the dogs are not in and around that space, especially with kids. So just thinking about what that might look like in your packet, there is draft use language that could be included in the policy that we currently have. There is a little bit of language in the existing policy that does speak to dogs either being used leashed or under voice control. We have taken precautions at this point to sign the property, just so folks are aware of expectations. And so really just opening up for conversation in terms of, how you'd like to proceed with this particular item, just for the folks at home, in case you haven't seen what's in the packet. What we would be suggesting is that maybe considering the following language be included in the use policy, and so staff would just add this as an amendment. But that dogs using Country Club Road must be leashed at all times or under effective voice control in designated areas. And that designated area piece is something that council would need to decide. What you might consider is that there's a equipment barn or garage, and everything that is over towards the parking lot of the building, dogs would need to be leashed, and then everything beyond sort of the garage is where we could have dogs off leash. Then that way there's a good distinct area for that purpose. And so just then going on with what's in the packet. See, so we've got the designated area, and then meaning that dog remains in the handler's sight and responds immediately to voice or hand commands at all times. Handlers must carry a leash and leash if their dog does not respond to commands, is approached by users with other dogs, and is entering any area where dogs might be leashed under the posted signage. So just making sure that there's just, some thoughtfulness that's going around with folks using Country Club Road. And then there's just a piece here about additional expectations that dogs would not harass or chase wildlife. Owners would clamp up after their dogs. dogs that display aggressive or overly boisterous behavior must be leashed immediately. And then the voice control is a privilege, and misuse or repeated noncompliance may result in restriction or enforcement per the city ordinance, which I also included in the packet. So with that, I don't know if you want to open this up to discussion.
Yeah. Folks, Karen.
Yeah, thank you for bringing this up. I appreciate the sort of filling out of the policy here. It is though what we currently have as our policy under the ordinance, which is your dog has to be on a leash or under your voice control at all times. And I think it's a good idea to kind of spell that out more. And I don't think that it's worth the risk of allowing unleashed dogs in that area where there are kids playing soccer, where there's childcare, where there's, you know, lots of people, especially lots of kids around all the time. So I really like the idea of making that area that's by the parking lot and over to the equipment shed and by the building, just that area right there, your dog has to be on a leash. And so when you get out of your car in the parking lot to walk your dog is on a leash, and you walk over to the left, you walk down there where there's acres and acres and acres and acres of land, and your dog still needs to follow all these rules, which is already the case. In Montpelier, your dog has to be under voice control, and we know there are a lot of dogs that are not under voice control that are running around. And so that's why I think it's not worth the risk, because we see in areas where dogs are not required to be unleashed at all times, we see a lot of examples of dogs who are not under voice control. And it's just too risky around the kids. So that would be my suggestion would be that we make that area in front leashed at all times.
Can I go?
Yes.
So I received couple of emails, just like replying to some of them while we are discussing. So people are wondering if there are any other public comment opportunity for this amendment, or tonight will be the only time to share their public comment.
Well, this is not a proposal for an ordinance change.
Okay, okay.
So
Good.
if it were an ordinance change, then we would be looking at 2 public hearings before we take action. Since it's not an ordinance change, it's a change in policy, we could make the decision tonight. Or if members of the council think it's premature and you want to get more public comment, then we could make the decision to do that.
So I'm not a dog, I don't know what to say, dog family, dog person. So I just want to be sensitive, everybody's feelings and concerns. If we can highlight what you just said, Jack, it will be good, because I think some people think that it will be a really big change. So maybe we can just like make some clarification and highlight that we are not making a change. We are just like highlighting the things we have already in ordinance. Thank you.
Thanks. Adrian.
So I don't know how this is enforceable. I mean, I talked to the folks at Turtle Island while they were doing their inspection, and a dog ran into the building. So I just feel like, and I've been up to Country Club Road, and I love a dog. I'm a dog owner, but man, topic of dogs in Montpelier will bring out this entire room. So I'm very careful to talk about dogs because I don't want to, you know, whatever. So I just want to be very careful about whatever we do, because yeah, as this Palin says, people get very emotional about any rules about dogs, but we have a childcare up at Country Club Road and a dog ran into the building. So what if there's children, and that every 100% of the time I get out of the car, the dogs run up to me, and I like dogs, but I'm not super psyched about dogs running up to me. And so what if I'm a child and then there's soccer? So I like the idea of having the leashes around all the children and the child care center, because I don't want a child who, I mean, who knows? I don't want something bad happening. but how do we enforce that? Like, what is the process? It's an open field. I'm just very concerned. I'm actually more concerned about this than like the Hubbard Park discussion that I, watched from afar about dividing Hubbard Park. Because this has a childcare center, so I feel like it's a little bit more riskier. So I don't know what the answer is. I'm just concerned, and I just want to prevent anything bad from happening.
Jocelyn York, I see you've got your hand up. Did you want to say something in response to that? Okay.
Yeah, I think you raise a really good point about enforcing this. It's really, really hard to enforce. As we've seen in Hubbard Park, there are definitely people who are not abiding by the new law, the restrictions about dogs in Hubbard Park. And I assume that would probably happen at Country Club Road as well. And so we would need to really think about how are we going to handle that a little bit differently. Maybe we have more signs, maybe we do a public education campaign. Maybe we figure out an enforcement, an accountability mechanism so that if a dog runs into the childcare center, they can make a phone call and the police will come and give the person a ticket or something. Because right now there's just sort of nothing at all happens when a dog is out of control. So I don't know what exactly would work, but yeah, that would be an important part of all this.
Anyone down this end?
I'd just say my daughter plays soccer up there. Last week I went to soccer practice and a big dog, just ran into the middle of the field while they were playing. And the kids love the dog and we have a dog. Everybody loves dogs, but and I think the idea of a dog walking into a childcare center that would bother me.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I'm also not a dog person, but I've, dogs can be excitable. I think it's a lot to ask a dog to not run into a field where kids are kicking around a ball. I mean, it's just a bit much. So I like the idea of a designated area leashed until you get there. Enforcement is going to be an issue. And the best we can probably do is education and signage and rely on other folks who observe something happening, reporting it or at least keeping track of it.
Jim.
Well, enforcement's definitely going to be a problem because we're short on the police force, and I'm sure there are other things that may be more serious that they have to go to. And so, I mean, to think that they got to drive way out there when there's a lot of other issues happening in this town, and we know about that. We're seeing them. And so I'm wondering if some kind of, I know it's a little costly, but a fenced-in area. There's a lot of acres and some kind of fence where they could run free when they're there, and dogs like to run free. We know that. People like to have their dogs get exercise, and because I think you're going to have issues where even when they're far away, a dog sometimes takes off. I was just on my walk 2 days ago. Some little dog, not a little dog, it looked like kind of a one of the pit bulls came flying out at me and was right around my feet circling. So I just stood still and hoped. And finally the owner came out and apologized and got it away. So it's going to happen. So sometimes a separation zone is where it can be the safest, where they can take the dogs, just let it go. Nobody has to worry about it. It's fenced in, but I understand that's a cost to put a fence around, but that's probably going to be the safest way. That's all I'm saying.
Adrian.
I want to be really cautious of talking about people with the dogs because our next meeting is going to be filled. So I think I might just propose a suggestion. We know we have a problem, right? So the problem is we just want to make sure that the children are safe. We have dogs running around. We've got soccer. We know that this property is way more populated than it was 2 years ago. So one of the suggestions, I don't know how we do, I'm more than happy to do this, or if anyone wants to do this, like go up there a couple mornings and talk to the dog owners and see what they recommend, get their buy-in. Because if we don't get their buy-in to begin with, I mean, I watched some of those meetings about the dog park in Hubbard Park, and I don't really, I don't want that to happen here. So I think get their buy-in, talk to them, say, this is what we're trying to do. What do you suggest for your dog? Right? Like, what is the best, so not solutioning, but getting some input, getting some suggestions from the people that walk their dogs. And then maybe then working with them to come up with some solutions because, yeah, I've seen how it goes. I'm just trying to prevent that. That's all.
If I could, I will say, like, just reflecting on that soccer game, it was also really cool sitting on the bench and seeing how many people were walking their dogs. Like, I literally counted like over 10 people on that property. And it was actually really great. I was just thinking about, like, here's a resource for the community that they are using. I wonder if there isn't just like a communal way to do this, of like maybe a gentle sign that says kids at play, like, watch out for your dog or something that, because I really agree that the enforcement's going to be hard. Right. And so maybe just reminding people like, hey, there are a lot of kids here and we just really want to take care of them.
Let me get some input from the public. Jocelyn, you've had your hand up for a long time, so why don't we start with you?
Hi, for those of you who don't know, I'm Jocelyn York. I'm the co-executive director at Turtle Island. And so, we have been on the ground talking to dog owners because we've been encountering quite a few of them. And kind of two big things that are coming up. One is many of them asked if there are certain hours that would be better for them to come than others. And so, we've been telling them what hours our children are typically outside of our fenced area, which is about 9:30 to 12:30. And we don't really go out of our plate, like fenced in areas much outside of that. And so that's important information just to, as you're trying to figure out various policies, like maybe there's a certain hours of the day kind of thing you could do instead of a full separation. Also, there are quite a few elderly folks who have limited mobility, who have dogs who have more energy than they do, and who are looking for places that are accessible for their dogs to run, who maybe live in apartments in town. And so those folks, if you're going to say they need to go over past the garages, then like they're going to have to be allowed to drive over and park over there probably, which is another thing, because that's it's quite a walk to get over there from the regular parking lot right now. So those are, and the folks who have been friendly and willing to chat with us and willing to share their concerns, those are kind of the two big things. But yes, enforcement is tough. We've had people I've come to talk to and tried to be friendly with who've said, no, you're the newcomers, you don't get to have a say, and just walked away from us. And so, to your point, Ben, I don't know that a gentle sign is going to be quite effective for those folks, because those are the ones who are the least attentive on their dogs as well. We have a log where teachers are writing down what their experiences are. And one of them just about 2 days ago encountered a greyhound who was off leash, who was being a bit aggressive with another dog who I always have the teachers write down if they were able to locate the owner, and they said at no point were they able to find the owner for this dog. Typically, eventually one does show up. That time it did not. And often we do have to wait for the owners who are yards upon yards upon yards away. Like we can't even recognize their faces. They're so far away from their dogs. So this is going to be a bigger project than a tonight thing. Adrian's right. But we're willing to work with the public. We love dogs. We just, when we have our little group of kids, some of them are scared of dogs. They're tiny. They're very exciting for dogs who love children. And those dogs often get even more excited at the sight of a group of small children walking together. And we don't want people to feel afraid to come. We don't want people to feel like their spot's been taken from them. We believe the outdoors are for everyone. But I'm wondering, so the thoughts are that we need to make sure that whatever works does work. Yes, Adrian, for everyone. And we'd be open to an hours restriction instead of a full separation.
Thanks, Jocelyn.
Yeah.
There are a couple of people in the room. You're up first, I think. Yes.
From Montpelier. I have a husky, and I think there's some of us that walk around 8:30. And we've been really trying to be recognized that people come and bring their kids. So we've been leashing our dog. We saw the signs and we were starting to do this anyway. But we have been leashing the dogs and we've been avoiding coming at 4, I think, or 4:30 and on Saturday mornings because of the soccer. So there are some, I just want to iterate that you guys in some ways are picking out instances that are unusual for our dogs. And I don't feel that's entirely fair. Because I think the dogs, most of the dogs that are there, they just want to go off with their buddies and they want to run. They're really not too interested in their kids. I mean, some of them are, but so I think the idea of working with the Turtle Island and also having some kind of communication with the dog owners in general, I think it's been working to some extent. I mean, I don't know all the people that go, but there's one group that goes at 8:30. There's some people that go maybe at 4:30. Then there's a couple of dog walkers who with several dogs, but they usually just go straight to the left. And the dogs, that's the part of the park that the dogs really like. That's where they can really get loose and just really run. So I guess I feel like it could work out if everybody knows the rules and we can get some kind of discussion between the city and the dog owners. I don't want it to be like Montpelier, Hubbard Park either. That was hard. But I also feel, I think a lot of us feel that there aren't enough places in Montpelier that a dog can just really run. And there are a lot of places where people can walk and they can ski and they, in some ways, play soccer. And I just wanted to say that we are trying and we have talked to Turtle Island. I think one dog going into the building is unusual. I think one dog going to a kid is a bit unusual. Most of the dogs, like I said, really want to be with each other. That's why they're there. What else I was gonna say? In terms of the recall, I know that's been a problem. Several of us have gotten collars that will buzz the dog, and that's worked pretty well. So I think there is a recognition that there can be a problem, but I just want to iterate that people are trying to focus up, to get their dogs to focus and come.
Thanks.
Yeah. I
Thank
think
you.
that's it.
Yeah. Mr. Marino?
Put the T in there. Everybody does that. It's not Marino.
Martineau, sorry. Well, there's another Marino, there's another
Martineau. Jiminy Crickets.
I thought I was doing well to remember anything.
You know, Artie, same thing every time. Hi, Maurice Martineau, 6 Scribner Street. I walk my pug and my pug wanna be there. It's a little basset hound mix. We get away from everything there. However, they're always with me, but at the same time, you heard it, dog walkers take their dogs there. They don't even live in Montpelier. It's being used by a lot of people and it's great. However, why don't we just have all the Montpelier residents register their dogs there at Turtle Island, give them a red hand, something so that they designate they are from Montpelier, they walk for free. And if there's anything wrong, we know their dog's registered and there's a problem, we talk to the owner. People that aren't from Montpelier, you have to come and register and you pay a fee. And if your dog doesn't act well, I'm sorry, this is for Montpelier residents only. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. I don't know, just an idea.
Thanks. Did I miss anyone else who was trying to right there? Steve, of course.
Yeah, I think part of this is the kind of fuzzy thinking between using the word policy, rules, ordinance, and not really distinguishing. You know, if we use the same policy to decide that nobody can camp there, it's not enforceable. Anybody can camp there, you know, and they can tell the clowns who put the policy together to pound sand. But we just heard in the news of a 2-year-old that was killed by a pair of dogs, recently, not in Montpelier, not even in Vermont, but it does happen. And there are aggressive dogs, and there are dogs that are triggered by different, I'm not taking a stand one way or the other on this, but I also want to look long-term. If people are telling Turtle Island that you're the newcomers, we've got a right to walk our dogs, how's that going to work when people start buying lots and building houses up there? Are we creating an entitlement, that we're not going to be able to withdraw from? That's a problem. So, citations, I mean, we got people right in the French's block who let their big dogs go out and crap on the 14-16 empty lot or behind where the car chargers are. We've got no enforcement to pick that up. And certainly these owners aren't going to walk to the far end of the field to follow their dog to pick up whatever crap's out there. So I think that we need and the fence thing, the fence idea is, it might work to keep a fence around it figuratively, but the fence probably get in the way of our site remediation. I mean, somebody's got to go out and map and test every so many feet and dig down and find the concentrations of toxins and decide whether we take it off 6 inches of soil or 2 feet of soil. And I can imagine the environmental engineers aren't going to want to work around a fenced dog park. So this is, again, a cluster screw of planning that has not been done right. And you can either make it worse or make it better. But we don't really have, you can't rely on goodwill and trust and cooperation to manage dogs that are wild animals, really. So unless you were going to implement something, make it an ordinance, use video to ticket people, I'm not sure the mechanics of that, but it shouldn't have to take a cop out. It shouldn't need to take a cop out of town to go out there to ticket somebody if you know who the owner is and you know who the dog is.
Thanks, Steve. Oh, I want to get to the other people. Elena Gustafson.
Hi, thank you. I'm Elena Gustafson. I live over on Westwood in District 2. I think I'm just weighing in on this as somebody who is a dog owner and loves dogs, and every opportunity I have to let her off leash, I do. But I am also somebody who believes very strongly in leash laws. And really, we have to put the well-being of our children and those who are in public land above our animals. So I would just encourage us to look back to Turtle Island. As Jocelyn had already outlined, that they would be amenable and open to hours, I think is a great idea. I would also disagree with the previous speaker in that I think that generally as a population, social contracts are really quite effective. So if we are communicating with our population at large, with our dog owners at large, and keeping in mind their needs, as well as those who are most vulnerable in our population, I think we could actually come to some agreement that would be quite effective. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other council members have thoughts? I can tell you, I know that not being a dog person myself, but I know that that people really really appreciate the ability to have their dogs just run loose, and it seems to be good for the dogs, and the dogs like it. And I know from my experience of being up at Hubbard Park and having people's dogs run up to me, and everybody has always known that the rule was that the dog had to be on leash or under voice control, and the dog runs up to you and you can't see the owner. well, obviously, if the owner can't see their dog, the dog is not under voice control. Because they don't know what the dog is doing. So that makes me come around to thinking that we can't rely on people's goodwill to say they're gonna make sure their dog is only where it's supposed to be. So some kind of physical separation seems very important to me, whether it's physical separation by a fence or just by distance seems, I'm not sure what the way to go on that is, but it seems like one, we haven't had very much input from dog owners here, and I think that since they're affected, I think we should. So I would suggest that we take this up again to give dog owners a chance to be heard, even though Adrian points out it could be kind of a bloodbath when it happens. I saw some of the Howard Park hearings too, and so I know people have big feelings about this. But I suggest we have council, staff either come back with a policy that we would tell them what we want in it, or just come back with this policy and say we're gonna have a public hearing to have people come in and state their opinion before we act on it. But I'm open.
Ordinance, that'll bring them out.
Well, that very well could be, and so I'm open to suggestion on what the instruction should be.
Yeah, I'm fine with another meeting where they could come in. I think this is, if we don't, and this is done, we're gonna hear about it one way or another. And really, seriously, you want to be really safe? I'm talking a fence. I'm talking some kind of physical separation, because something will happen. Because when I was on the walk, it was the little dog that was barking at me that excited the scary dog that came at me. And then both dogs were circling me, and the owners were not far away, and I'm looking at them like, hello. But something will happen, guaranteed. And so I know it's going to cost something to do a fence, but I think that's the safest way, in my opinion. But
Carrie.
I think it's a good idea to not take any action tonight and to let the public weigh in, dog owners, and also other people who are not dog walkers and have opinions. And I think we've got a few suggestions that have floated up here. So there's the idea of a fenced off area. There's the idea of restricting one area to on leash at all times. There's the idea of setting up certain hours during the day when Turtle Island is open, when soccer's happening, or whatever else it is. I don't know what that would be. So those are three possibilities. Oh, and then there's, of course, making them be on leash on the entire property all the time, which I don't think anyone is really suggesting, but that's something that could happen. So I would suggest that we come back to this, we keep these possibilities kind of alive, and we hear from the public, and then we decide what the most appropriate action is after we've done that.
That work for everybody?
Totally agree. I think it's a wonderful opportunity to work collaboratively to find a good solution.
All right. We'll get that on the agenda. Kelly, I'll figure it out. I'm not sure if there's space on the agenda yet for our next meeting, but we'll figure it out.
Just that.
All right, hunting. Now that we've gotten through one easy topic, do you want to say anything more about hunting before we, Mr. Martineau, are you the person who wrote to us?
Yes, I am.
I thought so. So you want?
I have a big long speed. Grace Martin, 06 Scribner Street. Basically, from days of Elks owning it, I hunted up there, asked permission of the board other years also, and been given it. But as I've been walking around and scouting and doing a lot up there, I don't know if you're aware of how many vacant sites are up there. I could tell you right now, if the city were to leave a dump truck there for the weekend in the parking lot, I could fill it with just tents of how many are up there. Every valley, every crevice that's near water has got tents that have been abandoned, children's clothes, toys. I mean, I understand why they're there, and it hurts. I'm an outdoor enthusiast that I come out of the woods with something every time, and it's usually trash, because that's what I do. But I need help on this one, and I'd like to be able to hunt up there. Archery only. Abundance of deer, you'll see them in the fields a lot, and there'll be a lot of starvation. I lived on 6 Scribner Street, and I had 9 does in my backyard. They're not gonna make it. It's the clear cut up above that was done, that was going to be a nice addition of homes for us. But they have also taken a lot of vegetation that those deer were eating. So I just want to ask permission to hunt out there, but I also want you to know that hunters are advocates of the outdoors. And I want you to give me the permission to pick up that mess.
So before you go, I've got a couple of questions for you. You specifically mentioned crossbows.
Yes.
And
Archery.
yeah, but a crossbow is different from a regular bow or a compound bow, and I assume it shoots farther and with more force. Is that right?
Yeah, a true hunter will only shoot within a killed range. I don't mean to be so blunt. I've never shot anything over 40 yards with a bow. You can hit something at 100, 125 yards if you want, but that's not fair to the animal. It's not fair to me, because I'm not going to find that and he's going to die or she's going to die. That'd be wasted. That's not what a hunter does.
But if you miss, it could go, you're aiming at something 40 yards away. If you miss, it could go 100 or 150 yards, right?
I'm always aware of my backdrop. Always. That's all I can tell you. And there's no way. I would prefer to shoot in a tree stand, so I shoot down. There is no way it could ricochet. If you're worried about that, and I understand that. It's not a high-powered rifle. And I've never had a bad day in the woods. You can just sit there and watch a chipmunk for 4 hours. It doesn't matter. You're in the woods. But it's across the street from me. And I've already done some scouting, and I can tell you right now, there's 3 bucks running around up there, and there's 7 does. And I haven't even put out a trail camera. I'm just walking around. So there's an abundance of deer there, and they're not all going to make it. And you know darn well there are no flowers growing any of the homes around that area, or it's an abundance of deer.
So what did we say the last time you came to us asking for permission to do this?
It was archery only. And that was it. And, there wasn't any, only one or, or whatever, nothing. It was just archery is allowed. And that was it. And the thing is I hate to be so selfish, but living on Scribner Street is right across the street, so I can hunt very easily. And it's hard to get out these days.
Can you remind us of the season for both?
October to December.
October.
Thank you. Muzzle loader is, they changed. Yeah.
So October to December 1st or through December?
Through December.
Through December.
It's October 1st until November 15th, which is the
first day of rifle, and there's a 2 week or so break, and then you can pick up with it. Again, yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions for anybody? Sal?
How many hunters are there? Do you know how many hunters do you run into up there? And is it a certain part of the property or is it?
The only other time, there was a gentleman that came 3 or 4 years ago at the same time. And he sets up his, right by the shed, the
Maintenance shed?
Maintenance shed. There's a nice valley right there, and that's a funnel to here, and he would set up a tree stand there. And I said, well, I'm setting up on the power line, and fine. And he said, yeah, well, there was a 6-pointer that walked by the other day. I didn't have a good shot, so good luck, but he's coming your way, and never saw him, but that was years ago. I don't think there's anybody else up there.
Hmm.
And I was just kind of surprised, just walking a third of the area. Man, I didn't realize how many people were living up there. It's just,
Well, I know a lot of hunters who are, they show a lot of reverence for the animal and I'm not worried about those hunters. I'm worried about the aberrant situation, somebody who's not paying attention, who doesn't recognize where they are or doesn't care. That's sort of what bugs me with all of the additional activity we've had. Now, if it's in the sort of the western portion or, there's nothing happening out there, although you're encountering, campsites. So it, a sort of blanket permission worries me a little bit because the situation there is different from what I think it was even just a couple of years ago, and certainly through, your lifetime of hunting up there. So those are concerns that I'm trying to weigh, but I appreciate your comments.
oh, I understand and respect the fact that times have changed, but at the same time, I'm worried about that if I am fortunate enough to strike an animal and he goes running that way, I don't want, I'm just painting the worst picture.
Yeah.
He drops on the soccer field, or she drops on the soccer field, and I come walking out of the woods. I'm painting the worst picture right there. And it could happen. So, I'm not gonna, it's 9 times out of 10, that's not gonna happen. I probably shouldn't have even brought it up, but I'm painting the worst case scenario. But I'm hunting about 500 yards away, but deer can run a long way.
Ben?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just don't know the answer to this, but like, what's the policy, for example, with crossbow hunting in Hubbard Park?
Carrie?
So I don't have a perfect answer to your question, but I have been reading the ordinance lately about this because I did have a constituent come and ask me questions about this. And the ordinance is very specific about different kinds of firearms, and then it just says bow and doesn't recognize that there's a difference between, this kind of bow and arrow and a crossbow, or the giant super high powered crossbow with the scope that can go like, 3,000 feet or something like that. So I don't think it's for tonight, but I think it would be great to take a little closer look at that and just get a little bit clearer about how to ensure safety with bow hunting. And I'm confident we can figure out a way to do it. And I think, people being able to hunt in the places they have hunted traditionally sounds great to me. And, the worst case scenario is the arrow goes astray and kills a person. And we don't want that to happen. And it has nothing to do with your skill or your intentions, right? But somebody could do that. And so we just want to make sure that, and I think that the ordinance pretty much says something about you can't use a bow for hunting without taking proper safety precautions or something like that, is this sort of vague thing that says you have to be safe. So I think that gives us some protection at this point. And I think, you're an example of a hunter who takes that seriously and thinks about what that means. So for another time, we might want to kind of clear that up. But I think for now that we could I don't see a problem with granting permission for hunting in the same way as been done in the past, unless something else has changed that I'm not taking into consideration.
And I see a couple of members of the public. Walt?
I'm actually the other hunter that Maurice was talking about. We met up there about 5 years ago.
Oh, no.
Maurice. Okay, so my name is Walt Goodwin. I was born in Montpelier and I lived there for 27 years. I currently live in Berlin. I've been hunting the elk property for probably 50 years now with no issues. When the elk property was sold to the city, I attended a council meeting.
Yeah, Walt, there's an issue with the audio. It's very hard to make out what you're saying.
Yeah, is that better?
No, I don't think so.
I sent this thing, what I was gonna read to Ellen. You have that?
Yeah, I don't know what's going.
Is that better? No?
We'll try it and see.
Is that better?
Yeah. I have a suggestion. We've got a phone number where you can call in, and that might work better.
Okay.
So you know what that number is? We're going to tell you that number in just a second.
Okay. I'm ready.
So the number is, if you're ready, Walt, okay, so here we go. So I'm just gonna go with the first number that's on the agenda. So it's a 1-301-715-8592. Yeah, I think, Steve. And then once you're in, I can give you the meeting ID and the passcode.
Okay.
And then you'll also want to mute your computer's microphone.
Okay. So, Walt, if you can still hear me, the meeting ID is 840-8056-4502. And then the passcode is 014733.
Don't need the pound sign.
And a pound sign after the code.
I didn't get that. Can you give me that again?
Do you need the phone number, Walt, or do you need the?
I got the phone number. I just
Okay.
need the.
Okay, so the meeting ID is 840-8056-4502, and the passcode is 014733, followed by the pound sign.
Is that my own?
I think we're still hearing your computer. Okay, now you've got yourself muted. Try talking. Not hearing anything. Yeah, while you're working on that, Jocelyn, I'll call on you.
I'm just mostly asking, and maybe this is an obvious answer, and I just don't have the knowledge about hunting that I need to know to ask this question. But I'm assuming this hunting is not happening during school hours.
Okay, Walt, do you, or Mr. Martineau, do you?
I usually have like 7 to 10, well, 5 to 10 in the morning, 3 to 7 at night.
Okay, thanks. Do you have anything to add to that, Jocelyn?
Yeah, just, my teachers were taking the kids exploring and they came back to tell me they found a tree stand and they were a little concerned. So I just wanted to make sure that I just wanted to make sure that we weren't going to be worried about encountering somebody hunting, between 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. essentially.
Okay, Walt, how are we doing? I assume that if you connect, we'll see your number come up on the screen as a participant. Oh, and I think we do.
Okay, I think I'm there.
All right, very good.
Okay.
Thank you for your persistence.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm the hunter that Maurice was talking about that we met up there. And so my name is Walt Goodwin. I was born in Montpelier and I lived there for 27 years. I currently live in Berlin. I've been hunting the Elks property for 50 years with no issues. When the Elks property was sold to the city, I attended a council meeting in September of 2022 and was granted permission to keep hunting on the property. I only hunt with a bow at the Elks, and I would never bring a rifle or any other firearm on the property. It's also against the law to shoot a rifle in city limits. When I'm hunting, I park over by the maintenance shed and I walk into the woods there. I don't hunt out in the open and I stay far away from people. In the last 3 years, I haven't seen any hunters or walkers in the woods where I hunt. I've only seen one other bow hunter on the property, and that was about 5 years ago. And he's at your meeting today. So in 2026, there's going to be some new hunting laws, one of which is the city of Montpelier will be a special archery zone where you can bow hunt deer in an early season, which is 2 weeks prior to the regular archery season that starts in October. Fish and Wildlife is allowing the special archery season because the deer population in Montpelier has become too high. And in closing here, I hope you take bow hunting into consideration when deciding whether to allow us bow hunters to continue hunting the property.
All right, thank you. Adrian.
I'm just wondering if we should consider like a time just to, now that we have a daycare center up there. I mean, I'm very pro hunting deer because they eat my whole garden. So thank you for controlling the deer population in Montpelier. They don't have any other predators. So I think I just want to talk about that. So she said between 9 and 1, they go out and explore the land. They go do, walk the nature, and that's different than from what it's been in the past because we have children walking up there and it's intentional that they're in nature. So I don't know if we just want to, exclude those hours between 9 and 1. And Jocelyn, if you wanted to confirm that was the right amount, but that feels like more comfortable.
I see someone's thumb floating up. Excellent. So does someone want to make a motion?
I think you've got a couple more people, Jack.
Okay. I'm not seeing who they are, but Elena Gustafson, you've already spoken. Do you have anything to add to what you said before?
Not so much.
Maybe you talked about dogs before.
I was talking about dogs before, yes.
Okay.
I have a question. And it's both maybe to piggyback on what Adrian just asked and what Jocelyn asked. But I have kids who hunted. They were raised in a rural area, so I appreciate the culture. But my question is the city council giving permission to 2 specific hunters? Or is this going to be opened up to anybody to hunt on the land?
I would say if there's a motion to allow bow hunting on the property, it would not be limited to the two people who happen to be at tonight's meeting.
Okay. Then I guess my follow-up question to that is that we had the discussion about dogs on leashes and a concern about how the public would feel about leashing their dogs in that area and the safety of children. My understanding with hunting is there is no such thing as limiting the hours, although I guess you could certainly try to do that. So how does the city plan to enforce, or is that simply left up to the wardens to enforce hunting in that area?
Well, Councillor Gill suggested that she would be willing to allow hunting, but not during but only during certain hours. And I think if we grant permission during that period, then that's probably when they're allowed to do it.
Great. And I'm sorry, could you clarify who would enforce that?
Well, if they're doing something that they're not allowed to do on the property at that time, then we could call the police. Someone who observes that could call the police. Yes, sir.
True hunters are going to appreciate that they're even hunting there at all. They're going to self-police. A gentleman like myself, if we meet anyone else out there, we're going to talk to them. We're Montpelier taxpayers, first of all. And if the person has no association whatsoever with this area, they shouldn't be there. And, you know, outdoors people take care of the outdoors. And don't get me wrong, we don't go around being policemen in the woods, but we're caretakers of nature and what's right. And we've got a beautiful piece of property there that needs to be taken care of properly, both by the people that use it, the dogs that use it, and animals and hunters. And I think that all you have to do is be reasonable and just say, okay, let's have windows, but we should also let dog owners know too. Don't go sending them frickin' through the woods without at least some color on. Not that we're gonna shoot it anyways, because it's running so fast, but there's nothing worse than to get scared half-wits when you're sitting in a tree stand and something's flying by you and you didn't even see it. So if we have responsible dog owners, ethical hunters, great facilities out there for children, we should all be able to get along with soccer players and adults, and we just need guidance. That's all.
I also think that probably limiting it to bow hunting is already a more select population. So.
Well, I like the idea of a time limit. As I think about dogs racing through the woods with owners racing after them, I wonder if we, I mean, can we keep track? I mean, we've had people request permission to hunt there. I don't think we demanded that, right? I mean, it's sort of voluntary. Can we, how onerous would it be to have people who wanted to hunt there ask for permission? Then we'd at least know how many and who they are. Well, of the ones who asked, and we have the people who didn't and went out anyway, but at least
That's supposed to the whole property.
We probably have to post the property to do that. Deputy Chief.
Mayor, I mean, sorry, I haven't walked out there, at least not 100% certain. I haven't researched the hunting permits in a long time. Pretty certain you have to have landowner permission, which would be the city of Montpelier. I would caution you about just opening it up to everybody, because that kind of negates that part of the ordinance for the landowner permission. But as it is now, with landowner permission, there's only one other place in North Branch that we know about where some owns.
So what you think is that we should grant the permission to specific people, not to.
I wouldn't want to like say who gets it, but I wouldn't want everybody to come and ask the same permission.
That way we know who's out there and who has permission. And if they don't have permission, it's a violation of Fish and Game laws.
So the motion would be something like we allow bow hunting to people who request permission from the city. And are granted it. And do they come to you?
I have had people come to me, but in years past, they've gone to the city manager.
Okay.
So it sounds like it's that's currently required,
Sounds like it, yeah.
asking for landowner permission.
Mhm.
But we'd want to reemphasize that, I guess.
Yeah.
And then I guess we don't have to set up a process, but we need to know where to send people.
Yeah.
You could put it in the city manager's office and that's going to take them plus.
Steve,
I didn't hear what Kelly just
she
said.
said we can send people to the city manager's office.
So I'm not sure. I think you should ask your council to figure out whether that applies to publicly owned lands, whether that landowner permission may not be the same on privately owned lands as publicly owned lands. It's really hard to ban people from publicly owned lands, even though when you try to. I think the city wants no trespass to a woman from the police department bathroom. Dubious legal grounds, very dubious legal ground. So I just think that, but keep in mind, can be some good cooperation around this temporary, but it is a temporary, it's a changing use. That property is changing into a public housing, might be a village, might not, might be a suburb. There might be a multi-use path going out across into Sabins through the power line. And so the hunting, the areas where the deer winter or forage will probably change. But I'm glad somebody else mentioned that rifles are already banned. So we're only talking about, I guess somebody could theoretically think they could hunt with a pistol, but that's a whole nother story. But the kids' hours are not the only one. The dog walkers are going to be concerned about hunting too, because they don't want to only walk their dogs in the protected no hunting, 9 to 1. So this is a really more complex, I think if we try to just create the impression that we're requiring permission from the city council or the city manager, somebody might challenge it. I just don't think we should bluff people the way that our police bluff people. You can't sleep on that public land, or you can't sleep on that public land. This is not the proper way to manage public assets, just with bluffing and intimidation. So we need to be real clear on who does this apply. Anybody can come shoot archery here. If so, I think we would have to post it and say hunting only allowed during the hours that we create the window. And that would prohibit hours during the school. But is it different on weekends? Is it different when there's soccer games? It's really complicated. So I'm just pointing out that the dog walking off leash in the remoter areas is going to conflict. It's going to spook the deer, and it's going to conflict with the hunters. I don't have a solution. I'm just thinking that this isn't another thing we should do sloppy.
Thanks, Steve. All right. Okay. Yeah. Does anyone else does anyone have something they'd like to propose as a motion? Yes.
Make a motion to authorize city manager or city staff to do it. Should we just say very specific thing in our motion? Because we don't know the details. Do you think it will be enough to move forward?
We could ask the city manager to come back with the policy in writing. I'd like to give her some guidance so she knows what we're asking her to do.
Okay, yeah, I will be more comfortable voting for that one.
Carrie.
Understand that. I'm sorry. What is the suggestion?
I just said that instead of being very specific tonight about the motion, the time and everything, I said, can we authorize Kelly to come up some guidance and recommendations? What should we include in our motion? And I said, I will, and Jack said, yes. And I said, I will be more comfortable voting that motion instead of just like saying things that we don't know the details tonight.
Can I just ask some clarifying questions of
Yeah.
like am I understanding this correctly that like what I heard from Officer Molden was people need to ask permission to hunt on the land?
He's not a lawyer.
I just want to make one correction
Yes.
on that.
Arnie, could you come up to the mic and introduce yourself?
State of Vermont, Arnie McMullen, Recreation Department Director. The state of Vermont, if you're hunting for youth hunting for that special weekend with mentorship for adults hunting with seasoned hunters, there is hunting by permission only. You do have to ask for permission. During the regular seasons, you don't have to ask landowner permission unless it's specifically posted. That's in the state of Vermont law. So I just want to make sure that at least that's clear. And people have been hunting up there for years, and I've been up there during the season and I haven't seen people. I'm not hunting myself up there, but we don't even know they're there. You know, they're out of the way. And just from a hunting experience, if there's kids around and dogs around, you're not going to see deer. So you're leaving it anyways. So yeah, just to share that. So deer are smarter than that.
Yeah.
So folks, I'm open to suggestion. I just feel like whenever we're thinking, we've gotten kind of into a habit of saying, well, let's ask the city staff to come back to us with a policy. And if we don't give city staff some guidance on what we want the policy to say, it makes it harder for them to do that. Jim.
I like the fact that she said some hours. Okay, no hunting in those hours. I think you would be fine with that, right? But what Arnie says is true, and I used to be a hunter. I'm not anymore, but you're not going to be where there's people, dogs, or anything because you know you're not going to see anything. That's just really walking in the woods. So they're going to look for people where nobody is, so that's where the deer go, because animals don't want, like he said, animals don't want to be there. So I say restrict those hours that she said the kids are out. And other than that, let's allow it. I don't know if they're going to be out in the winter time. You know, they go into December. We can ask her, is this a year-round thing?
Carrie.
So it seems like hunting, if the land is not posted, people can hunt on it.
Yes.
As it
And
stands
it's
now.
serious rules to
And so
post
we
it.
would like to have some more restrictions. I would like to have some more restrictions than that. So does it make sense to address this in our policy that we were already talking about with the dogs and with all and the camping and everything? Does it make sense logistically for us to put in a policy, say that, you know, hunting is only allowed between these certain hours? And legally, can we do that? Or do we actually have to post the property? That's what I don't know. So I'd like to have an answer to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Just to, I might, Mr. Mayor, so I don't know the answer to that. I mean, we can certainly find out and then just make sure that it's legal, whichever way we go. Make sure that it's reflective of the intent of council.
So you're going to do some research and come back?
Yes.
All right. I think we're where we're going to get tonight. I don't think. Yeah, I think we need to move on from here to the next item, but you've got some guidance and we're going to have some research. And we go from there. And now it is 8:46, so we're 16 minutes past our break time. So it's time for a break. We'll be back here at approximately 8:56. We are up to our second budget workshop on district heat and parking. Sarah, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Getting the losers out of the way.
I wouldn't call them losers per se. I wouldn't call them winners either, but
Underperformers.
yeah.
For improvement.
So many opportunities. Okay, so I'm Sarah LaCroix, the finance director, and we're on budget workshop number 2. This one's devoted to parking and district heat. And so I'll take you through a general review just based on the fund types we spoke about at the last workshop, and then I'll take you through the parking fund and the district heat fund. So here, just the general review for the parking and district heat funds is that these are enterprise funds. And so they're used for activities that operate like a business, and we charge fees to recover costs for those as opposed to raising tax revenue. These budgets include both operating and capital budgets, or should include both operating and capital budgets. Given how these funds are performing, the ability to fund capital at the moment is a bit less than, which is, part of the problems of the things we need to discuss with these 2 funds. And then again, just the revenue sources, like I said, parking permits, meter revenue, ticket revenue, capacity and energy charges, those are all fee-based. And then we could have grants in there, but at this time, we do not. And so now I'll take you through the parking fund. And so really parking is a tool for economic vitality and not just about collecting revenue. Here, the purpose of a parking system is to support a vibrant and accessible downtown by ensuring convenient short-term parking for visitors, customers, and employees. We, as a city, seek a balance of availability, affordability, and sustainability that encourages folks to move on for additional economic activity, as well as there are financial benefits from a parking system that can be reinvested into the downtown parking system to support maintenance, infrastructure improvements, and enhance the overall downtown experience. So here with our parking system, we roughly have a total of 554 managed spaces. All spaces are Park Mobile compatible, and there are 3 different payment options. You can pay with Park Mobile, you can pay at the meters, and you can pay at the kiosk. Here, you can see there's an outline of the locations, and then there is an interactive map on our website that I have linked here, just so that you can see what I'm sharing. But you get the idea. If you follow the link, there's an interactive map where you can see all of the spots, which is helpful if you're looking to do a bit more digging into the parking system. Here is just the standard map that's not interactive, but I thought this would help paint the picture of parking locations in the downtown, just as we consider this topic and move through this presentation. So the parking fund budget, this is a slide you've seen before in the prior presentation with just the quick outline of what was in the 26 budget. I wanted to highlight that the revenue sources in that budget include $333,000 in meter Park Mobile revenue, $106,000 in permit revenue, $102,000 in tickets, and another $29,000 in employee parking fees. And so that is primarily how this parking fund is funded, is through these different revenues. I thought it was important to look at trends in both revenues and tickets. I felt that I should go back. Usually I only do 5 years, but I thought it was important to take a look at pre-COVID levels as far as revenue and tickets are concerned. You can see, back in 2019, the parking fund really reached its peak, and it was doing incredibly well, enough so that it could start to build a fund balance that would allow for investment in the infrastructure and improvement of the lots. Unfortunately, with the pandemic and the loss of the state workers and doubled down by the flood, we've not seen a return in parking revenue. I do think the state workers returning is optimistic, and should drive revenue back up, so that's something to consider. And along with the downtrend in revenue overall, you can see, there's direct correlation in lack of parking tickets too, that also brings that revenue down. Here you can see in 2019 we were issuing about 13,000 tickets. 2025 we were excuse me, year to date, that's an older total from when I gave a similar parking memo towards the end of 25, but you can see that we're significantly lower than we once were in ticket revenue. So again, revenue shortfalls and fixed costs still below pre-COVID levels. We have a lot of fixed costs related to maintenance and leases. The parking fund operated at a small deficit in 2024, but that was only because we were able to allocate $215,000 of the Budget Adjustment Act money to that. And 2025 is looking at about a $216,000 loss again. And so that'll be a direct hit to fund balance, and we'll take away from capital reserves and our ability to reinvest in the infrastructure we have. And so right now, if this structural imbalance persists without intervention, we'll continue to see a decline in the parking fund, and eventually we'll have to make some hard decisions about what parking looks like for the city.
I'm sure can answer the question there. I don't know, just on the capital reserves, are those segregated for the parking fund, or are those general capital reserves?
No, so any parking revenue stays in the parking fund. Right. So an excess of parking revenue would build the parking fund balance and be specific for reinvestment in parking capital infrastructure, just based on the source of revenue.
Thank you.
And so another thing to consider as part of the parking fund is the enforcement staffing. The current staffing has one full-time enforcement officer, one partial support position, and then the deputy police chief is funded by the parking fund. This is because both police and dispatch spend a significant amount of time related to parking, and instead of allocating a small portion of each employee that's in dispatch and parking to the parking fund, mathematically it equates to the cost of the deputy chief. And so that's how that's funded. And that keeps overtime allocations from hitting the parking fund that don't belong in the parking fund for officers, through time. And so in the 25 budget, we did reduce a part-time enforcement position, which you can see also in the reduction in tickets. And so again, the impact from the enforcement staffing constraints really it is a small staff with limited enforcement capacity, reduced ticket volume, lower compliance and turnover, and these directly affect the revenue and the system effectiveness. And right now, without a ton of people in the downtown parking, aside from the lower revenue, there are a ton of issues with turnover, just from my own personal visual perspective. But if when the state does return, I expect that we would need to see more turnover with additional people in the downtown. And so there are just things to consider as we look forward in the parking fund. Is it more staff? Is it less staff? And where do we want to head here? Yeah, Jim.
Do you have kind of a percentage figure of the actual tickets given and how much is paid?
I don't, and I can look into that if that would be helpful.
Well, I'm just wondering if, the 80% of the tickets given is paid, and do we count it as the income as tickets given or tickets actually got paid?
We would need to do an adjustment at the end of the year to recognize revenue. And so I would expect the tickets that are unpaid would be deferred into a future year when they are paid. And if they're not paid, there is the option to turn them over to collections.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
And so I mentioned the state workforce return a few times. Hybrid work significantly reduced the weekday parking demand. You know, when COVID happened beginning in December of this year, employees will return to work in the office 3 days per week. I think that this change will increase our weekday parking demand, especially in the core areas, boost permit and hourly usage, and improve turnover and revenue recovery. I do want to make sure we're monitoring demand trends, reassessing permit allocations and pricing, and ensuring enforcement capacity aligns with that increased activity. But I do think the return of state workers presents a great opportunity to help stabilize and grow the parking revenue and the fund itself. And so that is a positive, and I know I've not given very many of those. So this slide is a lot, and I'll share this presentation with you. But I wanted to make sure we discussed the parking lot leases and did an evaluation of those. We have 2 big leases in the parking fund. You can see the lease periods, rates, the amount of property tax that the city pays, termination clauses, options to purchase, city's responsibility. And so at one point, you know, we think as a policy decision, we were discussing, you know, whether or not to let a lot go. And I think with the return of the state employees, you know, we should consider heavily what that looks like and take some time to assess, you know, if parking revenue does return towards pre-pandemic levels, what that looks like. And I just wanted to make sure we take all things into consideration as far as parking policy is concerned while we think about the budget this year and whether we hold on to these leases and what steps we take next. And so here's just a snip from the website of our parking rates. They are quite low. And so one of the questions to pose is, should we review parking rates and, you know, what that looks like and how we accept fees? Do we switch to park mobile entirely? Do we keep on street and kiosk? You know, there are many things to consider. But I don't believe parking rates have been adjusted in quite some time. And so I just wanted to draw attention to these. So that budget consideration is if we should be reevaluating parking fund rates.
Sarah, have we compared the rates we're charging to other municipalities, Barrie, Waterbury, Burlington?
Yes, I know that Chief Nordenson has a list. I don't have that handy with me, but we've talked about the parking fund and how to help boost revenue and follow parking policy and be there to do what that's truly meant. Because, right, this isn't a revenue generator, but if we are going to do parking, we've got to do parking. And so one of the things to consider is raising rates to help offset costs and do the repairs to the lots that are desperately needed.
If I could just real quick though, thinking about like the return of state workers, and we want to really be inviting them to come back downtown and like, you know, meeting them year one with an increase in rates, you know.
They'll be parking in the state lots. It'll be pushing other folks out of places they maybe should have not been parking.
Okay.
And force them back onto the street. I don't expect this would impact state workers. They'll be in state lots. And so then policy options to consider. In the memo I provided a while back, you know, there were several options, like I mentioned, park mobile only, demand-based pricing, hybrid systems, lease review, or free parking and no parking fund at all. And so you know, those are just things to consider as we head into budget season, because they will have an impact on if we're budgeting for additional staff or tech or you know, whatever that goal and alignment might be for our parking policy and what that looks like.
Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah, just a really quick question about the Park Mobile and how tickets are written with that system. How does enforcement work with that? Just curious.
Accurate.
Kevin Montpelier Police. So when the service officers are walking around, they have, we call it a Game Boy. It's electronically based. It's hooked to the internet. They refresh and they can tell if somebody's paid to park mobile by their license plate. The only issue is sometimes people will pick a wrong zone, and we get those appeals all the time. And you know, we usually accept their appeals, but it's pretty effective. I can tell you that the kiosks are really aged and they're hard to maintain, and the meters as well are hard to maintain.
I don't think I use Park Mobile. It is very, very easy to use, so I really like using it. But recently they changed their system. Now it doesn't allow us to put the numbers of the parking. It just show us the closest one that, yeah, that's also, I don't know how it will affect the appeals because I cannot really put the exact number. I have to choose whatever Park Mobile tells me to choose, the closest one they give.
I don't actually write the tickets, so I'm not,
Okay.
I'm not really familiar with how Park Mobile works, other than I do see all the appeals. But I haven't seen very many issues with Park Mobile.
I was asking because I'm wondering if there's any, sorry, I was asking because I was wondering if there's any advantage. Do we get more tickets issued if we use Park Mobile or meters, or is there, is there a difference there? How do we get more tickets?
I think more tickets is more people being out and doing enforcement. I don't think Park Mobile will drive tickets. It's just one of those things where I was thinking Park Mobile only would actually be less staff because there wouldn't have to be somebody going out to collect the meters and maintain the meters and, so there are advantages and disadvantages to all options. And, we want to make sure it's equitable and that everybody has access to parking.
This is only peripherally related, but it is related to parking, right? Because I've seen some notes in Front Porch Forum recently about people parking on Barry Street in the designated bike lane. And when I was driving through there tonight, I think there are still parking meters on those spaces that are in the bike lane. And I think that's probably sending the wrong signal to people.
We can certainly address that.
That was the question. This might be very silly, but what is the kiosk parking?
I'm sorry. On Stone Carter's Way, there's an actual kiosk.
They're like a vending machine.
Like a vending machine, you type in your license plate number.
I don't think I've ever used one.
Yeah, there's a lot of maintenance issues for those. We've actually had to remove a couple.
Yeah, I think we decommissioned about 5 because they were flood damaged and didn't return those. And I don't think we've seen, can't say we've seen a drop in revenue, but people are regularly using Park Mobile and the Park Mobile a lot.
Do they use the kiosks?
They still
do? Oh, they do.
People do still use the kiosk. I think people are drawn more towards Park Mobile because, if you put in 2 hours, on your phone, it'll alert you at 15 minutes left on your parking. So you can, I'm not quite done my appointment at DMV. I can add, another 15 minutes or.
So just one more question. So how many kiosks do we have? Sorry, I'm going with this.
I think we have 3, but I'm not 100% certain. I think there's 2 on Stone Cutters and 1 in Blanchard Lot. We used to have, we had them in 60 State Street lot that was flooded and removed. I believe we had one other summer.
Okay, so I figured we could take a break at this point. You've been asking questions throughout though. Before I transition into district heat, just as we build the 27 budget, I just wanted to mention things to consider. Rate review, is current enforcement sufficient? Are lease lots still needed? Should we move to Park Mobile only? How do we ensure equity and accessibility? And how do we fund the parking lot repairs and maintenance? And again, I do think the return of state workers will be positive for the parking fund. And I plan to keep an eye on that and monitor usage and trends to see, hopefully we'll have a better idea. It won't be until after budget season, unfortunately, when we have that idea. But I do think it's positive and I don't want to be short-sighted with the parking fund and really consider the policy behind it.
Jim.
When you say our lease lot still needed, don't we have contracts on them?
Well, so that's the question, right? So there are clauses within them that allow for termination with a certain amount of time in advance. And so, and I believe the Haney lot comes up for discussion in 2026. And so that's, this is an important conversation to have because as we head towards that, that's another big conversation.
I was thinking more of the Jacobs lot.
Yeah, that one,
I think that one's pretty locked in, the 2088,
9 months advance written notice.
9 months. And who has the option? Do they have the option of saying yes or no?
Based on what I pulled from that lease, the city is required to provide 9 months advance written notice if payments are not approved by city council in the annual budget.
So if March rolls around and we decide we're gonna save $42,000.
Plus
Right.
72 in property taxes.
If we're gonna save roughly $50,000 by not appropriating that money, then 9 months later, the lease goes away.
God, that was 24,000 in my day back in the day. That's how much it's risen.
I think I just want to understand, like for like the parking lot lease and like the park mobile and getting rid of the kiosks, like I don't even know what it means to get rid of the parking lot lease. Maybe I'm just not very smart, but like if we don't have this parking lot lease, like what does that mean? Like we just don't own a parking lot?
Yeah, I mean, so what that would mean is we wouldn't have ownership of that parking lot, and so they could charge for parking in that lot if they wish to.
Oh, so we're not getting it.
We would not get the revenue.
Okay.
It would not be a city lot, right? So we would be saving, $50,000. But we also wouldn't have revenue. And so, right now the revenue, best guess based on the fund's performance is not exceeding the lot lease. However, if parking resumes and we've gotten rid of that leased lot and then don't have the lot and can't manage, there are big things to consider as we move ahead as parking policy is concerned.
And if you had a private entity charging whatever rates they wanted on that lot,
They could be large.
considerably higher. Like you can see that in Waterbury, actually, there's some privately owned lots in downtown that are pretty expensive.
It would be kind of like the city center building parking ramp, which used to be public and now is not, and you can only park there with a permit. Or like the way you go pull it up in back of Positive Pie to pick up your pizza.
Yeah.
Well, you wouldn't have that option.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Yes, Chief.
That's right. We did kind of go through this with Capitol Plaza. We used to lease a section of that parking lot. And we used to regularly write tickets in there. And we no longer lease that, and Capitol Plaza now charges people to park in their lot. I'm not sure what the rate is, but
And if you're staying there, you get free parking presumably, but.
Not parking lots are always empty. Like why is that? Because it's so expensive?
And also Capitol Plaza, just if you use their facilities, you don't pay parking.
Yeah.
So they just validate your ticket. So I don't think they are making that much money from parking because when you're in and using their hotel or restaurant, then they validate your parking, you don't pay anything.
My hunch is that the lack of parking in the downtown leaves plenty of available on-street parking, which would be, my guess is cheaper than Plaza's lot parking. It's just taking a stab at that.
Is the Jacobs lot still have a lot of permits issued for their parking?
there is a section on the back towards the river that is permit only.
Right.
And there's also, I believe, 18 spaces that are dedicated for the French block.
Oh, okay.
When that downstream project.
That changed since my time, yeah.
2 handicap and 16 additional parking spaces.
And are we paying for those spaces or does Downstreet pay for them because they're the landlord or do you know?
The downstreet case, I thought I just read somewhere that it's 50.
Yeah, it's right at the bottom here. They pay for these spaces.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else on parking? I don't really expect any decisions tonight, right? But when we come, I wanted to make sure we were all informed and on the same page that when we come back and talk about this, when it's really time to do the budget build, we've got this backstory.
I see we have at least one comment from the public. Might as well get it in if it's about parking right before we finish up parking and move to the next item. So Steve, why don't you come on up?
Just a couple of things. There's a kiosk behind the drawing board. There's a kiosk over behind Walgreens, the back corner of Walgreens. That one got ran over recently. Somebody jumped the steel pusher. The car ended up perched on the thing, but took out the kiosk. The Park Mobile is not for folks that aren't facile with their cell phones. Or don't have the app or don't, there's a draw. I talk to a lot of folks that are feeding meters and they really appreciate that our weekends are free and that they can put quarters in because there's a whole lot of people that you discriminate against right here on Berry Street rather than maintain the meters because the meter got rusted and fell off. It's like Park Mobile only. I'm not sure that's good policy, to basically if either we're going to get rid of all the meters but if we do get out of the Jacobs lot, we wouldn't have to pave it. It's going to be an expensive paving job. We would lose the revenue from downstream. Jacobs would start getting that revenue. But in light of the governor's executive order on housing, as the assessment of all the state properties, if we're going to be talking or thinking about building housing along the river, maybe above some of those parking lots. Maybe it's time for a full in-depth parking study. Who's making money where? How many spaces are there? How many would be needed under certain housing scenarios? Kind of really mapping out the whole economics, both geographic and cash economics of parking. It would be good to start that now so that we know what we're negotiating with the state if we want some of that riverfront land for housing and parking. But Jacobs lot needs attention, even if we kick it back to Jacobs to get that attention. But that's all I have.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, we used to have a parking committee and that was many years ago, but
I sat on it.
Yep.
I formed it.
Sal and then Karen.
Data in Park Mobile on which areas are used and which are not? We do.
Less so on the meters, obviously, but from Park Mobile, I can run reports about different zones and usages.
And are there areas that are underused?
I
Because
think most areas are underused right now.
Yeah.
So I think that's hard. It's
Oh,
hard
so
to
yeah,
judge.
how far back does the data go? It doesn't go that far back, does it?
I'm not sure how long we've been using Park Mobile. It predates me.
Yeah.
So it probably goes back to 5 years. It would take quite that long.
Oh, so, yeah. So we don't really have a good way to gauge it yet.
Not to compare back to pre-pandemic levels, definitely not.
Good, thanks.
Carrie. And then Ellen.
I think this is a good opportunity for us to be thinking about what we're actually trying to accomplish with parking in the city rather than approaching it from how much it costs and figuring out how to make the numbers balance. But to first identify what we're trying to do, which I think is, what's all we have to identify. Are we trying to make sure that there's sufficient turnover for businesses? Or are we're trying to make sure that there's parking and it's a, free for all, whatever. But if we figure out what it is we're trying to accomplish, then we figure out how to do that. So maybe that free parking is the way to go. I'm not saying that. I don't know how it works, but just, to start from that, like first, what are we trying to do and get really clear about that. And then that will help inform what we're going to pay, how much we're going to pay and how we're going to raise revenue for it.
But I tried to frame this conversation from the parking policy side and less about, costs and whatnot, because I do think the why is really important here.
Also, Park Mobile is 15 cents more expensive than the normal parking. So if you are planning to do some changes in the fee, we can either increase normal like parking things to the same rate to the parking park mobile, or vice versa, because it is more expensive than the.
Yeah,
normal, like,
the additional fee related to Park Mobile is because the user is responsible for the fee for the Park Mobile platform service itself, if you don't, paying that fee. And so that's also a policy decision to consider, but I do think most places do pass on that fee to the end user as opposed to, eating that themselves.
I just want to echo Carrie on terms of like the why here. I mean, as you kind of said at the beginning of your presentation, is to turn over the spaces, right? To support downtown businesses. That's right. We're not like doing the parking thing just to maintain parking department, right? Yeah. And so I guess what I wonder, Sarah, is like, do you have any information or expertise, or is there a way we could gather like what is the ideal rate of turnover? Right. And how, based on the Park Mobile data, like, how are we doing? Right. Do we want to see more turnover? Do we know that? Why? I just wonder, I'm sure there's all kinds of studies out there, right, about like the optimal amount of parking turnover for a downtown of our size. And I just wonder if we've been able to look at that, or if we could look at that.
I do think the planning department has looked at that in the past. I think that they also, are occasionally going out and monitoring parking turnover and what that looks like. And so we can follow up with them to see what that is. It's not really my area of expertise, but.
No, but I mean, even just like, maybe just like, I suspect somebody like Main Street America, right, would probably have information on like, what is your ideal kind of turnover rate? And then we could just cross-reference it with the data that we are collecting, maybe, and then I think pull levers depending on that.
Absolutely.
Adrian.
I'm remembering what I thought about last time when we talked about parking. It's coming back to my brain. I think important part of this problem that we're trying to solve is talking to the downtown businesses, because I know that a lot of the workers use those spots, and that doesn't help with turnover. And so I think for us to think about, the downtown businesses, the folks that work in the downtown, like Positive High, any business. So was there an opportunity to, have a employee parking lot to allow, visitors to come and park in those spots downtown? So we do have that turnover. But it might be worth talking to Montpelier Live or some of the downtown businesses to find out what their current parking behavior is and see if there's any, maybe that's not the current state. Maybe I'm making this up, but I feel like someone did tell me this. But that could be part of this equation to kind of relocate some of the employees so that we open up those spots also.
Bella.
Yeah, last time we were talking about this downtown businesses, I think suggest either free parking or 2-hour parking. So it will help their business when people come here and do business. But there's a huge issue about employee parking, because they mentioned that they cannot find people to work here because of the parking situation, because it is very expensive. And even if they are using some specific lots all day, they cannot afford it in the end because they are not being paid that much.
And one other thing, which if we were not concerned about revenue, and if we were only concerned about turnover, we could get rid of the meters and just chalk tires the way they do in some locations. Now that still requires paying someone to go around to chalk the tires, and then go around to issue the tickets if the person is still parked there. But that is an alternative strategy. And if we're not making that much money from the meters, and we are paying for the meters and for the service, who knows? Elena Gustafson.
Hi, thank you. Elena Gustavson. I am on Westwood Avenue, but I'm also a business owner in downtown. I would encourage the City Council to engage the Montpelier Business Association as well as Montpelier Alive, because we do have pretty strong thoughts and opinions about how parking should be handled. I can tell you that we would not advocate free parking downtown. And that anecdotally, I can tell you from talking with other business owners in the area that we are concerned about folks, residents, and employees who park in those prime spots. And they park there all day because it is cheaper for them to get a ticket than it is for them to pay for a permit. And I think that there is a way for both our businesses to work with the city to help alleviate the pressure, because it is absolutely true. Pelin is correct in that most of us are solopreneurs, or we have a limited number of staff. We can only contribute so much in terms of benefits and salaries. But I think that there is a way that we could work with the city, and even where parking can be somewhat of a benefit or somewhat subsidized to help our staff find parking. So I would encourage the council that there are creative ways to tackle this. And I would also encourage the council to consider raising the rates as well as extending those rates through the weekend. Whereas free parking then becomes a really wonderful benefit to our locals during certain times of the year, but yet where we can still take advantage of the potential revenue that folks from out of town bring with them when they come to park in our downtown.
All right, Jim, you get the last word.
Yeah, when I was on the parking committee, one of the things we did was we looked at where the spots were, and the closer you were to the downtown, it was more expensive. The more it went away, it got cheaper. Because, and what we found out is what she says. If you do free, the workers, they want their horse close to the saloon. And so they're going to put their car, they're going to park their car close to where they are. So when they get out, they're quicker to their car and they can go. When they come in, they can park right in front of the store. People are generally don't want to walk that far when they park their car where they go. So they're going to go to the easiest spot, and they will tie it up all day. We found that out. And so if you want to have turnover for businesses, you've got to have 2 hours or something like that. And the parking committee could really solve a lot of problems because they could look at it in depth. And that's what we did. And we actually had it during those years where we didn't lose money. We didn't gain money, but we didn't lose. We stayed on top of it.
Thanks, Jim. District Heat.
Awesome. Oh, well, maybe awesome. So the district heat fund, this I would expect will be a little bit quicker than parking. District Heat Montpelier is a project between the city and the state, and it delivers local renewable thermal energy to the downtown, as well as it's the state central heating plant that we're purchasing capacity and energy off of. And so we have 17 customers in the downtown that include municipalities, us, the school, and other private properties. And so that's what comprises the district heat fund's customer base. And so here, again, this is the district heat fund budget from 26. You can see the revenues are charges for services, both capacity and energy. And then the expenses are broken down by admin, energy operations, the state contract, and the debt reserve. And so here I went through revenue types and the history. The capacity charge covers essentially everything that is not energy. And I've got the proposed rate that you all recently approved in August. And what I thought was important here was really to show just the trend in revenue year over year. And you can see the revenue's gone up, and that's, because it's associated with the costs that are going up. This fund has some challenges, and one of those is the increasing costs here, and I'll go into that in a minute. So it's just an overview of expenditures. In the 26 budget, you can see the pie graph on the top right, debt, operating costs, and wages and benefits. And, this fund is primarily the operating costs, though there is debt associated with it. And then the key cost drivers are the state contract, heating, fuel, personnel, depreciation, and debt service. And you can see the debt service is large and depreciation is larger, which I'll go over in a minute on a slide about fund balance and net income here. But you can see I tried to break this graph on the left into operating costs, depreciation, and wages and benefits. And so you can see that depreciation number is in the 315,000 range, and the debt number is in the 180,000 range. And so my favorite question came from Kurt in my interview, and it was about depreciation. And depreciation seems to be, a tricky topic, but in best practices, you would budget for both debt and depreciation in the enterprise fund. It helps you pay the debt and build a reserve. If you can't do that, then you would budget for the higher of debt or depreciation. And here we budget for the lower number, debt, instead of depreciation. And that's because just quite frankly, the user rate can't support budgeting for the higher value. It is not sustainable for the customers to pass that additional cost on. And so you'll see in a later slide where the fund operates at a loss. And this is because we just are just budgeting a deficit because we can't do that to the ratepayers at this time. And so, again, that is also a policy decision. We could increase rates if the council so desired. But, we've been trying to be fair to the customers who are on board and the limited number of customers there are. And so here you can see the debt service. It starts, I'm showing you the debt payments in 2026, and I take you all the way through 2039 when the final debt payment will be made on a 25-year loan. One of the biggest, and you can see the total debt remaining exclusive of the Vermont Economic Development Authority loan is 1.935. So there's an additional 750,000 not in that amount. And so the way that VITA loan works is that we are making interest payments right now, but not principal payments because the fund is not cash flow positive. And so that principal keeps being pushed. And at this point, we are not making payments on that principal portion of that debt. In addition, their contracts for customers go 20 years, and there is a piece of debt that goes for 25 years. And so if customers jump off after year 20, between that VITA loan and that other piece of debt, we have about 1.3 million in debt payments remaining. So that is a conversation we will have to have at future meetings about what to do about that. We do have about 10 more years on the contracts with customers. And so depending what this looks like in the future, we really need to plan heavily with 5 years remaining so that everybody has ample time, depending on what that looks like. If it's we've added a bunch of customers and rates are more favorable, or if it's people are jumping off and we've got to talk about decommissioning the system and how we pay back this debt. And so there are larger conversations to be had outside of the budget season, but I want to be transparent as we head into budget season about what this fund looks like and some of the challenges we're facing here. And so the next slide is going to show you the annual operating loss, and it varies from 215 down to about 125. And so there are different swings in different years. 24 was more favorable because we didn't invest in District Heat because we were repairing from the flood. And so those expenses didn't come from that fund. Other years have been heavier because we've had to do capital improvements. And so you really can see, though, that, we really are trending in the 125 to 150 range. And that is the gap in budgeting for depreciation and debt, which is why that's so important. And so right now, we are operating at a loss and not funding for future capital improvements is really what that means. And so I can see the face you're making, and I feel that, Ben, because it is unfortunate as we work to unwind and figure out how to move ahead here. And so, again, challenges very limited customer base, only 17 customers, high fixed cost, aging infrastructure, operating in a loss, and the debt I mentioned previously. And then we are working to add new customers. We are partnering with the state. They've offered to help support. There are potential grant opportunities that we could go in on with the state to help expand the system. They've offered assistance with grant applications, further system evaluations, and cost benefit analysis. So we are, as a team, Kelly, myself, Kurt, and Chris Lumbra, really actively working to try to figure out what's best for District T as we move ahead, and what the next 10 years and future look like. And so with that, just looking ahead for 27, we continue focused on financial sustainability, customer expansion and system optimization, infrastructure resilience, and, you know, just the good environmental impact that this system offers, you know, are some of the benefits. But, you know, District Heat is a tricky one, and, you know, we are working hard to figure out what the best path forward is.
Jim.
Sarah, how do we handle the state buildings that are on this?
The state building, so
I mean, not the state buildings, the city buildings. I'm sorry.
What do you mean? Like,
Well,
we are a customer like anybody else, so.
So how do we handle that payment bit? We pay the regular rates into the
Yeah,
system?
no city discount.
No city.
Fire, PD, and City Hall all pay their capacity charge and their share of the energy charge based on usage.
So are they gonna want to get off the system? I mean, are they losing money if they go to another system? Would they save money?
There are trade-offs, and it's a hard analysis to go from oil cost to the cost of district heat. With district heat, there's a lot less internal maintenance that, you know, we have to deal with on the day-to-day that are added costs that would factor into that calculation. And so it's not as cut and dry as I'd like it to say yes or no. And so, you know, there are costs you don't have when you're on district heat that you would if you're on something else, but, you know, it's hard.
Right, but I mean, we don't try solar or anything like that, so.
Like at this point, anybody who is in this contract is in this contract for 20 years.
Okay.
Do you think the issue that oil prices have never gotten high enough to make district heat a better deal?
I
I know
don't think district heat is a bad deal, though I know there are many people who would disagree with me. You know, I think there are trade-offs, and it is a numbers game. And so if we can find a way to get grant money to invest in the system, to get new customers on, that spread that capacity charge across the board, because most of the people have gone in and done improvements to their system to be more efficient, to have less spikes, to have a more stable capacity charge. And so that we have capacity available, and new customers would help. Not one new customer, several, or large new customers. And so that's why we're actively working with the state and trying to pursue grant funding to entice someone else, you know, to be on something large or multiple somethings, so that, you know, this is a good thing, District E. And if we can find a way to keep the customers we have, get more, and extend past the 20 years, everybody wins. But if we can't find a way to bring rates down and add customers, you know, we are in jeopardy of all the customers hopping off at the end. And there's a delta there where so many hop off, and we can't, because we wouldn't be able to pay for it, or the rates would be so high. And so, you know, people need adequate time to plan if they're going to be swapping out heating systems and moving to something new, or, you know, if we've got to figure out how to recoup those debt payments that we will have to make, and who pays for those. And so, you know, lots of tough decisions to make.
Adrian, then Palin.
Can you share what like the profile of a new customer would look like? Like, what does that mean? Like, what is a customer? Like, what is your requirements for a new customer?
Best case, you're in a building that's already on the district heat loop, and we just need to connect you to the district heat loop. That's a much more affordable connection than if we have to do like run a line down Elm Street and to connect more buildings. That's a more substantial, costly project. And without, grant funding, it's hard to burden the rest of the users with new line extension fees when their costs are already high. And so there's a fine balance about city funding, grant funding, incentivizing new customers, and then those customers having their own costs to connect to the system as well. Best case, somebody's already on the loop, but anybody who's interested, we are having conversations with and trying to rough up numbers to see if it makes sense to get on district heat.
Was there like a magic number you're trying to recruit customers to the system to say, we currently have 17, but we're really trying to aim for 30?
Depends on the size of the building.
Okay.
And the amount of capacity it takes and heat it draws, which would drive up, if we got a really large building on the system, compared to 3 small ones, right? Like it's hard to tell, but really it's the size and usage that is impactful.
So what are the barriers to getting on district heat for some new customers? Like, why wouldn't they say, yes, this is great, I'm going to sign on? Like, what are some of those barriers?
Cost.
It's their cost.
To get on the system, to convert their building, and to connect to the loop.
And so that's why you try to get grants to help subsidize that cost.
To make it more enticing to get on the loop.
All right, I think I understand. Okay, thank you.
Ellen?
Yeah, my question would be similar. I was wondering, are the customers like commercial buildings or like home owners, like individual? Is there any specific rent?
They're buildings in the downtown, so Vermont Mutual, one of the mutuals, Vermont Mutual. The Everett Insurance Building, the Leo's building is on it, City Hall, Fire, PD are all on it. There's Christ Church, the library, Bethany Church, I believe. So it's a mix, but it runs along. There's a specific loop that people are to.
We can target businesses, right? Like nonprofits or like commercial, but it sounds like business buildings have this.
Yeah.
And second one, just so I saw your environmental impact. Do we have environment tax? I'm not a pro-tax person, but I experienced like a couple of the towns in Vermont, they have environment tax.
Yeah, no, we don't.
Which like any building or any business creates bad impacts on the environment, they have to pay tax.
Yeah.
Then it kind of encourage them to use this kind of system, so they won't be paying the tax and they will also not destroy the environment.
The federal building's on the district team.
Correct.
What happens if, or it could be with any building, what if they sell the building and break the lease?
They're committed to district.
They're committed to district, so they'd have to pay out the total of the lease term?
Well, they're on district heat until the lease term is up.
I guess what I'm saying is if building ownership changes, right?
They're still on district heat paying both rates.
Okay, great. And is Capital
They
Plaza,
cannot escape.
Capital Plaza's on district heat as well?
They are not on district heat.
They're not on district.
They were at one point part of the plan to be on district heat, which I do think likely would have made a significant difference to the overall heating system had they got on. But I wasn't here back when that happened, but I do think they pulled out, and so are not on the system, which then makes the system look a lot different.
And just last thing too, right? Like just thinking about like flood resiliency, being on district heat is probably a much more flood resilient option for a downtown building owner than putting in your own new system.
Yeah, and it takes up a lot less space. We did have flood damage to district heat, but it was because meters were in basements, not to the system itself. The heat plant was fine. We were able to serve heat to everyone. It was fiber optic cables being pulled off of walls and meters that were underwater in basements. And so when we went back through, and it was about a $350,000 to $400,000 FEMA project to restore district heat. And all of those controls are elevated, following our standards. So I would expect, you know, in an equitable flood, those buildings would still be able to take heat, come heating season with minor adjustments. They've all of the state buildings are on district heat, not the city's version, because we just buy capacity and they manage the plant.
Okay.
So those buildings are all on district heat.
Council members, any other questions? Steve?
Yeah, I've spoken about Steve Whitaker, spoken about district heat a number of times. I would encourage you to learn more about it, either individually or before the whole council. I think it'd be educational for the public who's paying this $200,000 deficit to be informed about the economics of it. But Steve Ribellini has good firsthand experience. He connected his building at 15 state and he's been victim of the capacity charge and the absurd economics of it. But I want to remind you, we put the sustainability coordinator position on the budget to create that position. Their first and number one primary task was to make the district heat system run in the black. And instead it's turned into the handyman, property manager for everything else, taking that load off the city manager. City manager used to maintain contracts for all our repairs. And so basically we've delegated it down. We've got a whole new position for somebody who's not making the district heat running $200,000 a year. I've said, stop the bleeding. But on the pro side, the places where you could connect would be the parking lot, connect new big customers would be the parking lots across from the transit center. If we could acquire those from the state, the ones along the river behind People's Bank, and right, that would be a place where we could put a big housing, you know, with connected to district heat. And also the lot owned, or the combination of lots, Jacobs being the sticking point, but from the funeral home all the way over to St. Paul Street, that's owned by three parties, well, four, counting the church. Church is willing, Haney's willing, Ribellini's willing, Jacobs is Jacobs. But that's a place where you could do dense infill housing, and there is a pipe already coming into the library, from the library into the driveway of Maggie's Bakery, which could connect on and district heat that. So without having to dig up Elm Street to try to heat that. But there is a capacity limit. We've only contracted for so much capacity. And I did some rough math when we were considering connecting the Elm Street, Down Street properties. And that would almost use up the remaining capacity. I think I was told maybe we could contract with the state, renegotiate our contract for more of the capacity. It's not all allocated. So we might have to adjust our relationship with the state to have more capacity in order to market our potential customers to get this thing running in the black. But I got more, but that's all you need for now.
Thanks, Steve. Elena?
You want me to clarify any of that, or are we good?
Yeah, why don't you go, if you have an answer to some of that, that'd be helpful.
So nobody is currently paying the deficit that district heat is running. That is not a charge that is passed on to anybody else at this time. Then the sustainability coordinator is actively part of the team pursuing new customers. While he is, we had some big flood damage, and so priorities have shifted, and he was a huge part of repairing district heat and our flood recovery, and it's still actively working with partners to try to find new customers. And yes, there is additional capacity available to purchase from the state. We have been working with our own customers to find efficiencies in their system, which has freed up a ton of the capacity that they were using previously. So we do have a large chunk of capacity. And if we were able to get new customers, I expect that the partnerships we built with the state would allow us to purchase additional capacity to make this work. And we do meet with BGS quarterly to go over costs and financials and are actively working with them on the system and additional opportunities. So I just, we are doing all of the things that we can and are really trying to figure out what's best here. And at this time, nobody is paying for that deficit. What we will need to make decisions on is who pays back the debt if we can't right side this by the end of the term. But that's just my
Thanks.
percent.
Thanks, Sarah. Elena?
Thank you. I'll try to make it quick, and my questions actually are for Sarah. There's some clarifying questions. I benefit from the district heat as a tenant in one of Steve's buildings at 15th State, and it's lovely. But my question is, I guess what it comes down to, you said that the revenue, so I have three questions. Is there a base rate that those who are on the system pays? Is there then a usage rate on top of that? And are you taking into account, or is there any concern around properties that are vacant or being used as Airbnbs in regards to how that impacts the revenue for the district?
So there are two rates. There's a capacity rate, and that's essentially everything that is not the energy cost borne by the fund. And so the way that works is we've done capacity studies that review each customer's usage. And the way the agreement is written is that your capacity is based on your peak usage, your biggest draw on the system during that year or the last time we did the capacity study. And so we've done this multiple times now. And we could identify people who were high users and try to help them adjust their systems. But essentially that is a fixed 7-month payment based on prior capacity. And that's very clear and marked out. And then each person is also responsible for their actual energy usage on that system at a different rate. And that is metered, and we bill those monthly throughout the heating season. And then the third question, I apologize, I'm drawing a blank on here. Airbnbs, yes. So whether buildings are vacant or not, I mean, they may draw less heat. And so that would impact us we would pay less for heat because they would be using less, and they would also pay less. So vacancies don't impact the overall of the fund because of their energy usage. It would just be less, and we would be being billed less from the state.
Thanks, Sarah. I think this has been it's a very complicated thing that's people need to understand, and so this is very, very good. Thanks.
Yeah, if any of you have additional questions, you know where to find me in City Hall. Happy to pick it all apart.
Sarah, I feel like you say this every time you make a presentation, but it's like really excellent. Like, thank you for your work. It's very good.
I'll be honest, public speaking is my biggest fear, and so I really appreciate the positive feedback. So thank you.
Yeah, lean into it.
Well, you're getting plenty of practice.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
All right, items 11 and 12, special event policy review and parade ordinance review. And where we left it last time was that there were some comments and editorial proposals from council members, and we're at the point now where we want to decide whether this is ready to go to set a public hearing on the ordinance as drafted. And this could conceivably be pretty quick if people are satisfied with what it's looking like now.
So if you have any questions, we do have members of the public safety team here to answer your questions. There are no additional documents in terms of background. We just included what was included in the last packet. However, you'll notice that the policy has changed based on those comments. And so really, just highlighting that There are some items in here that were made in terms of clarity. But then, you know, we also did take a look at some of the definitions. So for instance, the public safety team is defined here. The other thing that I wanted to know in this policy that we did sort of include is Montpelier Live in the review for the permits. And so we found the suggested comment to be extremely helpful as we were looking at the policy as the public safety team. So we incorporate those changes into the red line version that you have in your packet. And so if you have specific questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, you know, the team is pretty happy with what this looks like. I also will note, though, that there is a portion within this policy if you should choose to waive any of the fees, you can do so. So with that, I can move on to the ordinance if you like.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
When do we comment on that?
If you'd like to comment.
Yeah, I
Right
mean,
now, if you want, Ben.
yeah, I think I really appreciate the changes that were made and like particularly around Montpelier Live. Thank you for that. You know, I still wonder, unless I missed it, but like I wonder if there's a threshold that we could put in here that like unless an event is a certain size, we don't charge for it. Because I still think it's three events that are, you know, the vast majority of the expense that has been seen. And then just looking, and I really appreciated putting the other policies from the other communities in there and saw that Burlington's is, if I understand it correctly, they're not charging unless it's an event of 1,000 people. And obviously their police force is much different in terms of size, but I just wonder if there was more consideration given to that idea of like, you know, unless it's a certain threshold, not charging.
Well, Chief Libby can speak to that.
Eric Libby, Fire Chief. I can speak to my experience in Burlington.
Yeah.
Those larger events are typically in streets that aren't Church Street, right? So where the streets aren't closed down, the city of Burlington doesn't have to do control. It doesn't take resources to close off the street for an event on Church Street. Battery Park, City Hall Park, the waterfront typically are larger events and require city assets, and that's where they're seeing the fees associated with those events.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we don't have a
Church Street
that we could say everyone go parade or march on. So we do have to use DPW and law enforcement to close those, but Burlington doesn't have to.
Anybody else? I know you still.
I'm sorry, I still don't get it because I just feel like I'm sorry, but feels like there's really two issues, right? There's the capacity issue of do we have enough police or staff to keep these events safe? And then it's like what it's costing the city in overtime or different time to have these events, right? And like one of those feels easier to solve than the other, right? In terms of like, you know, the cost, but the staff capacity, like, I don't know how you crack that nut. And so I guess I just feel like what we're really doing here is kind of saying, well, we really can't do as many events and we're going to put in a system that's going to, just discourage people from having an event. And, you know, I think if I'm mistaken, somebody tell me, but like, I think we need to really be transparent about what we're trying to do here. And, you know, as I've said, every time we've looked at this policy, I feel like the events are like, and we all know this, I feel like make our community wonderful. And so, yeah, it's just, that's the thing. So I guess what I'm trying to say is like, if there's a way in which we can, you know, solve this without really actively discouraging those smaller events that make Montpelier special, I would really like to hear that.
I think we have someone who would like to say something.
Kevin Holm, Montpelier Police. I'll speak to both things, the capacity and our goal is not to discourage events. It's really to recover costs. You know, over the years in budgets, we've cut overtime. We're trying to recover our costs. If we're talking capacity, I'm at capacity just to run up the ships, let alone any of these events. And I'm not trying to be negative, but I have 13 cops that are I mean, we're at capacity without any of that. This last weekend, I had 5 people here for the fall festival. It's, you know, and that's a small event. Yeah. Or a medium event. I wasn't here for it, but, so, I mean, our goal is not to discourage any of these events because we know it's an economic driver, but over the years, you know, things have changed. Our budgets have changed. We had a lot more built in overtime than we do now. We run it tight as we can.
Yep.
Act budget for DPW. I also just want to point out that smaller events, while they may not take a lot of staff resources, they could ask for lots of our equipment, things that we would be supporting them in addition to that. And we may not get those cones back. We may not get those barricades back. They could have volunteers that are willing to set up the whole thing. We give them 200 cones. We don't get them back. That's a cost that we have to then replace. So I think, you know, we talked about this in depth as the committee, like, should we waive small events? We kind of went back and forth. And I mean, I think where we landed was that we recognize the small events. We wanted to give you the opportunity to waive or reduce the fees at the council. Should someone want to come and support and speak to that, by all means, you have the authority to waive them. But we felt that it was a balance between providing equipment, personnel, and just really registering that there's other things that are coming into each of these events, even the small ones that may not capture the personnel side, but may. I mean, I've had requests after hours on a Friday afternoon where I've had to turn around, go back to the facility, unlock the facility, take out cones, put out barricades, just so that they can have their event. This past weekend, we couldn't get any union people to even really to want to be on this event. We had to force 2 supervisors and someone that was on call for streets, and we had 1 volunteer for the event. We had to have 4 people to staff this event. It was 28 hours of overtime for DPWs, just the DPW specifically. And that was a medium to small event. So I think it's tricky to say that this small event or this medium event should or should not have fees associated with it, or it should be just waived because you're trying to put everything into one bucket. But I think where we landed was just giving you guys the opportunity to waive them is what we felt was best.
I really appreciate that, both of you. Thank you.
Adrian, I think I saw your hand up. Is it still there? Okay, well, let me tell you what I think, Ben. I think we got a couple of alternatives. One is to say, just put this as it's drafted on for a public hearing and take public comment and move to amend it after the public hearing, or move to amend it now and then put it in the public hearing the way you want. But I suggest we put it on the public hearing the way it's drafted and go from there.
I agree. Thank you.
Adrian.
I agree with that. I would just like for the list of, I think I said this last time, but I'll repeat it. The list of events from 2025 and maybe 2024, if there's any differences, to reach out to those folks and invite them to the public hearing. Like specific, I mean, you probably have their contact information and a permit.
We have all.
Yeah. So I would like for them to get an email. We're having a public hearing. We want to hear from you because that's the point of the public hearing.
So we will certainly try to do that. It will be sort of reliant on your staff to do that and the sort of the capacity. And so I'm going to try to be better about registering where there are instances where we are a little limited. And so we will try our best to do that.
I mean, I know a lot of these folks, so I will also reach out to them, but if any other counselors or people, I think we can all maybe divide and conquer and just send them an invitation and, you know, help supplement the staff's capacity. And
yeah, thank you.
I'm more than happy to do that.
So does somebody want to make that motion? The motion would be to schedule the ordinance as drafted for the first public hearing.
Just to clarify, would it be the policy or the ordinance or both?
Probably both.
Okay, great.
I'll try to be very specific in my motion. I would move that we move forward with the policy and, geez, now I'm messing it all up because I'm nervous about getting it right. What do I need to do?
Schedule a public hearing on the ordinance change. We don't need a public hearing on the policy.
Correct.
We don't, but we could have a hearing just to be consistent.
Kind of makes sense for them to go together,
Okay,
right?
okay. So I'll try this. So I'll
Right.
move that we schedule a public hearing on the proposed ordinance change and the proposed policy change for special events.
And we need to put the date in the motion, right?
At our next meeting or?
At the next meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion or comments from the public? All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
I think it was worthwhile taking it up last time and bringing it back. So, all right, we're up to item 13. Review of the proposed contract for White and Burke RFP.
Are we for the motion revision? Can we do this? Because we said the motion wasn't valid and we have to revise it, which means that we cannot move forward, right? Well, these
Well,
are two different things.
what I would say is that what happened earlier tonight is we didn't pass the minutes because there's a question about whether the minutes accurately reflect what happened. But we still have before us a draft contract with Wright and Burke, and we could still take that up and take action on
Can
it.
we just get real clear on like, I'm not really understanding what happened, like the minutes. I thought that was referring to option 4A related to the Country Club Road infrastructure up to the road. If there's an issue about the White and Burke contract, I'd like to know what it is we're talking about.
The issue was when the subcommittee, this is what I understand, this is what was emailed to me. When the subcommittee was formed, whether or not it was specifically tasked to engage on the White and Burke issue, or whether there was crosstalk. So I interpreted the White and Burke portion as part of the discussion that didn't alter the basic motion that you had made, I believe. But
I didn't make the motion.
or was somebody I can check, okay. I just remember you.
Palin made the motion. I
Well,
said,
I can
for
check.
clarity.
That is correct.
Yeah, and
My point
yeah.
is simply that there was, once an initial motion was made, it was one of their situations where there was, and the motion will include this, does the motion include that? And I interpreted that as discussion of what the motion would allow, and not that people were actually literally changing the motion as a matter of process. So that's the question that has come into play. Is my interpretation correct? Or did that actually, did the crosstalk actually change the underlying motion?
Ben, did that answer your question?
Yeah, I would just like to, Jim, if I can, just real quick, just say, like, I feel, I mean, I watched that clip, right? And I specifically asked for clarification. Is this that we're going to be working with White and Burke at the subcommittee? And I believe I heard two counselor, or Jack, I think you said yes, and I thought you agreed. And then Adrian seconded it.
I think it was already clear though, but the question was, is this going to allow X? Is this going to do X? It wasn't, can the motion include X? So the problem I had was interpret whether this is crosstalk and we're clarifying what the motion empowers, or whether it's a specific task built into the motion. And that's where the conflict was. And that's what I want to go back and look at.
So Jim and then Adrian.
What I think, we had somebody say, we need to make clearer motions. What should have been done in that case, in my opinion, it was always done in the past, was you asked if you could add an amendment to the motion and the person who made the motion accepts the amendment. That was not done. It was just a statement made, another person saying yes. Nobody asked. I would like to make an amendment to the motion, and the person who made the motion did not say, I accept the amendment. That's how it was always done that I remember, and that's why it got confusing. If you would have said, Ben, I'd like to make an amendment to your motion, and Palin accepted it, it would have been a lot clearer, but that's why we're in the mess.
Jim, have you watched it?
You did not say anything about amendment.
If you did, I apologize and I can fix it.
No, it's not. I just think like I'm, Jim, from a point of process, you're probably right. But I have to say, like, I'm pretty surprised really, because it seemed crystal clear to me when what the intention was, and we voted for it unanimously.
Well, it seemed
But
crystal clear to
attention
me
is
what
not-
the intention was. The question is what the motion is.
Yeah.
The attention, I'm telling you,
I
we
get it.
always did things by amendment. Do you accept the amendment? Yes, I accept the amendment, and that's where I think when we heard somebody say you need to be clear, that's what they were talking about.
Adrian,
I'll just say that I think the motion, so the next morning, one that was at 11 o'clock at night. And the next morning, someone said, oh, you guys are working with White and Burke. And I'm like, no, we're not. We just had a motion to do the subcommittee. So I went back and watched it like 10 times because I was like, what did we do? It was so jumbled and it was like very fast and there was a lot of chatter. And I think I'm just telling you my perspective, because at that time of night, I was like, whatever, let's just second this and move on, because I was so tired. And I think that it was just not, I don't know. That was my feeling. I think I called Kelly and I was like, what happened at that motion? Like, what did we do? What were the implications? Because I think we should review it, because I think it does have very strong implications of what we're doing now. But I think that motion in that time and moment was, I think it was very rushed and it was very confusing.
Kelly.
No, I can say, that from the staff's perspective, what we thought the motion was, and like, again, it's what the official motion is. And so, I think that we will need to get an opinion on that. That being said, tonight we do have a contract with White and Burke before us to review. And if we do not review that contract and put it off until the next meeting, we will delay the work that we're doing. And there are some real serious consequences to that. And so, you could still take this contract up. And I would suggest that you do. Otherwise, I'm not clear on what you would like staff to do. And so I want to make sure that, at the very least, we do get that clarity. Because right now we're in a spot where this is really tricky and there's some things that really do need to be talked about. We do have Stephanie Clark here to come into executive session with us to talk about this contract. So we brought this contract back to you because there is, I'm not going to get into the details, but the way that it is structured, we wanted to make sure that you were completely aware of the work that was being done. And so we are wanting council to take action and be transparent about it. But we need to have those discussions in executive session to make sure that we are clear. So I guess that's just what I would like to say. Thanks, Jack.
I'm okay to go to executive session and discuss this contract more. I just want to be sure that we are doing the right thing because of the discussion we did at the beginning of the meeting. So I don't want to come back next week and then people will say that, oh, we warned you, but you went to executive session anyway. So now we have to just want to be sure that we are following the right steps. That's all.
Yeah, well,
Can I just ask, because maybe it'll help me when I reconstruct it, what the substantive difference is going to be as far as specifically empowering this committee to work with White and Burke as opposed to, were they disallowed? Was it either or, you can work with White and Burke or you can't? And I got the wrong one because I'm not sure substantively if it leaves you all in many different places, but it would inform what I listen.
I can tell you something that I felt, I thought I was just voting on that we are creating the subcommittee. I did not think we were voting on putting White and Burke in it at all because there was no talk of an amendment and an acceptance of amendment. So I thought the original motion that Palin made just talked about creating the subcommittee. And that's why I got confused. I mean, we always said, well, I'd like to make an amendment. And yes, I accept that. I did not see that done.
Jim, I'm wondering if I could, just out of curiosity, maybe this isn't the time, but like when I said, but we're working with the subcommittee with White and Burke and Jack said yes, and Palin continued, why not say something then? You know, and
Because I didn't think that yours was, I think that you were just throwing something out, but you didn't make it an amendment. So I thought I was just voting on Palin's thing. That's all.
The other thing I would just quickly say is that, like, you know, I think we can consider the contract, right? And if people don't like the contract, they should vote no, right? But I think, like, for the purposes of tonight, can we just go into executive session and discuss the contract?
Yeah, Kelly.
And so just, I'm going to offer an alternative suggestion here, which is that regardless of the motion, what we do have in front of us is this contract. And you can remedy that by going into executive session and reviewing the contract and then authorizing or not the city manager to execute that contract. And so I think that there is a elegant solution here for everybody and that we have a contract here before us tonight and we can review that contract.
Do we vote on it?
Well, what we vote on,
Because I don't remember voting being in the agenda. I just thought it was an executive session.
so
You
we,
did not put, when we come out of the executive session, voting may take place.
Jack, can I speak?
yes,
Almost in every case, contracts like this are in the binder for everybody to review. I specifically made a request for this contract and was told it's exempt. This is a highly unusual, this is improper, I would say, as far as our standard practice. But I'm just going to read you. I'm asking you to reject any further engagement of White and Burke for Country Club Road unless and until the city conducts its phase 2 public design process promised in 2023. The public was told that phase 2 would refine the conceptual illustrations into a real master plan. That promise built legitimacy. Skipping it takes legitimacy away. This isn't about personalities, it's about ethics and the public interest. Rehiring the same consultant without an open competitive process while shifting design power away from citizens to developers creates the appearance of favoritism and undermines trust. Even if it's technically permissible, it fails the ethical test, fair process, transparency, and meaningful participation. There's a straightforward path forward. Run a genuine, time-limited phase 2, publish how the input changes the plan, and if professional services are needed, run an open procurement that rewards facilitation skill and conflict mitigation. If you insist on continuity with the same consultant, adopt guardrails, written sole source justification, clear scope limits, public disclosures, independent participation auditing, and third-party review of any developer selection criteria. Montpelier deserves housing and resilience, and we also deserve a process that respects us. Keep your promise of a phase 2 process, which was White and Burke's recommendation, and the fact that they're willing to abandon it in favor of a secret contract that benefits them is wholly inappropriate. And for the city staff to be urging you to ram this thing through is wholly inappropriate as well. They should not be driving the bus here. This is something we've been denied, something we were promised in the June 2023 report, which was a phase 2 design process. That's been stolen from us for expediency. And this is the ghost of Fraser's intent all along. And if we were ever to name anything over Fraser, it should be the district heat system.
I'd like you to avoid personal attacks on any individual. Kelly.
So for clarity, I just would like to offer that council did take action in May to shift the way we were going to review this process and put the development process in place. This does not mean that we will not do the other due diligences that are listed in the plan, but council did review and did take action and instructed staff to proceed.
They didn't understand the implications of what they did.
We formed a subcommittee
that looked at it, wrote a memo, this council approved it unanimously.
Correct.
The chair would entertain a motion to go into executive session pursuant to 1 VSA section 313(1)(a). If someone would like to make that motion.
So moved. Nothing.
Yeah.
And I would add to that to invite the city manager and Stephanie Clark and
Right.
with us.
Is there a second?
Second,
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay. The yoga people are out of next door. So that's where we can go.
We're paying Stanley Clark.
I'm here.
Okay. Everybody, we're back in business. Carrie,
I move we come out of executive session.
is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, is there a motion?
I move we approve the contract with Whitenburg.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to comment.
Okay.
I'd like y'all to explain why this contract was handled secretly instead of being in the packet, as is typical practice for contracts for approval. Because this is, especially when there was information shared with counselors about other opportunities of why they should go to bid, there was no sole source justification presented. It's in violation of our procurement policy. And then you kept the contract from having the public's eyes on it until you're ready to vote. That's just looking really, really shady. And I'm surprised y'all aren't even discussing about the optics of it. But you really got a lot of people upset about this, process. Thanks. And I would like an answer as to why this wasn't publicly shared first.
Folks, is there any other discussion?
So who's answering the question? No.
Does anyone care to make we're not required to respond to the question.
So is there an option to share the contract and then have a special meeting next week to approve or not approve the contract? Is that something that you'd be interested in doing?
Where we are right now is there's a motion and a second, and we're open for any discussion. All right, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Abstain.
Any opposed?
No.
So we have 1, 2, 3 aye votes. Mayor votes yes. Okay. Next item on the agenda is item 14, other business.
Can I?
Ellen? Oh,
I added one item about the October 18th
yep,
this year.
that's
Okay.
exactly what it
Thank
is.
you, yeah.
And do you want to talk, or I'll talk about it? It's been suggested, one of the public sessions for the city manager's review was scheduled for the 18th, which is the same day as 18th at the Pavilion Auditorium, same day and within a few yards of the No Kings protest at the State House. And I don't think it was suggested that it's going to be hard to get people to show up at our public meeting. People will physically have a hard time to get to it. And so we should come up with another date for a public session. So I suggest the following Saturday, because we want to have at least one of these opportunities be an opportunity for in-person on the weekend as opposed to on an evening. Does that idea work for everybody?
Do we know that date will be okay with Ian? Because he will be there in person.
We'll check.
So maybe we can say that we will pick another date, but let's specifically say the date after talking.
Yeah,
to
okay.
him.
Say
Is
the
it
18th
okay?
is off, the 18th is off, and we'll come up with a new date.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, thank you.
thanks for bringing that up. That was a good point. Council reports? Palin, starting at your end,
No reports.
Ben?
Just, we had a housing committee meeting this week that Carrie, Jim and I attended. It seemed to go really well. We had 9 members who were engaged, elected a chair, started a work plan. I thought it was a really positive meeting, and we committed to reporting out on what happens at the housing committee. So I've done that.
And to follow up on what you just said, Ben, I think it was before you got here, I was talking to Jim, and the council had specifically said that
Yes.
the housing committee is going to be 7 members.
Yes.
There are now 9 people who are signed up to be on it, and so we're putting it on the agenda for our next meeting to expand it from 7 to 9.
Great. Thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome. Sal. Terry. Adrian.
I know it's late. I have 2 really quick things. So the economic subcommittee met, Kevin Chu came and presented. And so now we've committed to, I think it's me, Palin and Sal are going to meet, and is that what we're doing? What are we doing? Sorry. I'm looking at you. I'm so tired. It's almost midnight.
Yeah, so the Economic Development and Growth Subcommittee has community members supporting this initiative. That city councilors taking the lead, and that group decided we have an outline for the report we will present to city council. So they suggested Adrian, Sel, and I, plus David Cohen, one of the community members who created the outline. 4 of us will come, revise it, edit, then bring back to the our subcommittee meeting, and we will talk about it publicly. So that's the.
Thank you.
And until we come up with the revised one, we are not having meetings because we will work on this.
Thank you. Totally messed that up. And then on the 22nd, I'll try to be on Zoom, but I'll be in Atlanta. So I'll do my best to be here, but not guaranteed.
Okay, thanks. Mayor's report, I just have 2 things. One was that today was the town fair, part of the annual meeting of the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, and Bill Fraser was given a Lifetime Achievement Award for his many years of service to the city of Montpelier and to the broader community for all of his work as city manager. And second, some of these deaths have been noted earlier, but at City Hall, I received a copy of his History Connections, which is the publication of the Vermont Historical Society, and in the summer 2025, History Connections, the Vermont Historical Society remembers 3 people with strong ties to Montpelier who died in the past year. One was Barney Bloom, whom we all knew. The other was Michael Sherman, who also was a historian and very active member of our community. And the third is John Carnahan, who lived in Brattleboro, but was the father of Paul Carnahan, who was also deeply involved in documenting and studying and disseminating the history of the city of Montpelier, and so I think that's worthy of note. And that's all I've got. City clerk?
Oh, just to say, I should have trusted my original minutes. I'm sorry I got, when it was brought to me that I had screwed them up. Sorry, I guess I didn't screw them up because I just want to make sure people, because I don't think we were on yet here, then Ben was completely right about that motion. It was laid out pretty clearly, and then Palin said so moved, so Whitenberg was included in the motion. Just want to make that completely clear. The tape has been reviewed.
So those minutes will be on our next agenda.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's it?
Yep,
Any
that's all I
discussion-
got.
Any discussion about the election tonight? Upcoming?
It's a question tonight.
Yeah.
Crap, where is it? What am I doing? Is there anything I can report about the election? Oh, just that I'm still looking for volunteers for it. If anyone's out there still listening and wants to volunteer, give me a holler. And I think I've harassed you all too, with an email that went out about signing up if you can.
Thanks. City managers, you think?
Just a really quick thing, I know it's late, so sorry about this, just one thing. So I wanted to note that Palin and I are working together on getting a process together for public service awards, and so we'll be bringing that back to you on the 12th of November, that meeting. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. And now we can adjourn at 11:57 PM. Thank you, everybody.